A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to the 2021 Virtual Regulatory Cross Pharma, co-hosted by Janssen and TCS. My name is Tricia, and I will be your host for this event. Well, as I say good morning, I could also be saying a very good evening or a good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you have joined in from. Today's event will be seeing participation from more than 30 pharma regulatory decision makers from 10 plus leading pharmaceutical organizations around the world. In addition, our speakers, well, they represent the best of pharma and technology, possessing deep cross-industry, domain, as well as technology expertise. During the course of this event, we will be focusing and brainstorming on a few of the highly discussed industry-relevant pharma regulatory themes. We will be identifying approaches to convert those forward-looking concepts to reality. And of course, we're definitely going to leverage that power of technology. So without further ado, let me first introduce to each and every one of you our three-member organizing committee. We call them the brains behind this unique initiative. Dr. Hilde Vanaken is the head of industry leaders for life sciences and healthcare and brings with her more than 25 years of pharma experience in multiple leadership roles across diverse domains, including hands-on engagements with various health authorities. Our second member, Mr. Vishal Matre, is an Associate Vice President for Regulatory Services at TCS and possesses in excess of 25 years of regulatory pharma and technology experience. And completing the troika, we have Mr. Mohit Gupta, who heads the ADD, Regulatory Life Sciences Solution at TCS, and brings in 20 plus years of successful IT life sciences implementations at various domains. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to formally kickstart the 2021 Regulatory Cross Pharma event, we would like to welcome Carolyn Smith-Barrett from Johnson & Johnson. Carolyn possesses more than 30 years of pharma experience in the areas of regulatory submissions management and operations, global labeling, regulatory information management, and global regulatory affairs business enablement. A very good morning to you, Carolyn, and over to you.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for joining this virtual meeting. I'm Carolyn Smith-Barrett, Head for Labeling and Submissions Management at Janssen R&D, and along with my colleagues at both Janssen and TCS, we're thrilled that this conference includes, it looks like, over 50 attendees from across 10 different companies or more. As we all know, our industry is in a state of change. Change has been a reality for a long time, but the pace of change and the need for innovation has picked up significantly. The regulatory environment continues to evolve. The world demographics and patient needs are changing and growing. The focus on healthcare is increasing, and we have a whole new set of challenges in terms of the COVID pandemic, in terms of access to healthcare, mental health, efficiency of vaccination programs, and more. On top of all this, we know that possibilities for digital solutions and automation are increasing, and the development of significantly novel ways to look at our tools, processes, and end-to-end ways of working are critical. How do we innovate, learn from each other, and take advantage of all the possibilities out there? Possibilities that lead to efficiencies and quicker quality submissions and approvals. How could we rethink where we are today in order to be ready for the future? How will we work together to help reshape the industry? That is our focus for today. So we appreciate all those of you who wanted to join the session today and tomorrow to present and to participate. I'm very excited to get this session going. And so now I will turn it over to Vikram, who will share a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you so much. And Mr. Vikram, just a quick introduction if I can do for you, and then I will, of course, hand it over to you. It's now my pleasure to welcome Vikram Karkoti. He is from TCS, and Vikram has more than 25 years of professional experience, with roughly half of it spent in pharma research and development, technology transfer, and manufacturing domain. Over to you, sir, this evening.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you from different parts of the world. Those of us who are in East Coast, I sincerely hope that you stay safe and weather the storm which is on our way. I would say over last 2 weeks. Uh, I think all of you know this is the second Cross Pharma event we are hosting, which is focused on regulatory affairs. Some of you would recollect that the first one was hosted with Merck. So I want to start by thanking Janssen to come together with us to give us an opportunity to host more than 10 pharma companies together in this wonderful event. Cross pharma forums like this help us to develop our insights, which we gain from working in different areas, geographies, and domains around the world. At TCS, we are extremely fortunate to have 15 of the top 15 innovation driven pharma companies as our customers. We service 9 of the top 10 medical devices as our customers. All of you know that we are one of the leaders when it comes to providing technology and bringing the impact which technology can bring in the industry to most of the customers. So combining these aspects together puts us in a very unique, but I believe in a responsible position to bring the industry and business impacting solutions in the market with the help of our sponsors, the companies like you. We all know that regulatory space is fast evolving, and we are fortunate again to work with 8 companies or 8 sponsors in specifically in regulatory space. Uh, so platform like this, the industry forums like this, I think gives us the opportunity for all of us to come together and really focus on 2 important aspects. Number one, the whole process, right from planning to authoring to publishing, tracking, labeling, which is another important aspect, as Carolyn mentioned, and our ability to really answer queries which are raised by regulators and health authorities in a very efficient and quick manner. Second aspect, technology is a no-brainer that is playing important role in any digital transformation of every process. So also in regulatory space, whether it is from simple workflows, the point automations, or more importantly now, the AI part or the cognitive part. Together, I think we should brainstorm over a period of next 2 days to really see how we can make our roadmap in regulatory affairs, which are more driven by proactiveness and insight driven, rather than just mere record keeping and compliance driven. Right. So that is, I think, one of the important aspects we all should keep in mind. We know that regulatory space is highly fragmented due to the global nature of businesses. The local authorities and local regulators play their own part. We have affiliate businesses. Industry is going through constant acquisitions and divestitures, and regulatory guidelines are continuously evolving. On top of that, the business focus on areas like personalized medicine treatment, the drug device combinations are coming into play. There is an evolution of cellular therapies which is coming into play. And all this makes regulatory function evolve more, needs to, it makes regulatory function evolve in a more faster way so that the drug approvals can be accelerated. I mean, if this was not enough, COVID-19 brought its own implications in the whole industry. And the need for accelerating the transformation in regulatory space is second to none now. The whole technology transformation actually offers a very significant opportunity in specific areas like CMC. If you look at CMC area today, literally every organization has all the data sitting in some silo, in some digital form. What our ability, we have to really question our ability to bring it together. Not only just bring it together, but bring it together in an automated way, which in my view can be very significant transformation in industry. Similarly, labeling is the same aspects and so on and so forth. As TCS, we are highly focused on leveraging the unique industry insights which we develop with our sponsors and with a big focus on data, the data science, technology, of course, to meet the unmet need in regulatory space in a more accelerated way. In addition to this, we are also helping our customers to scale regulatory operations globally for a simple reason, because there is an increased demand in volume, speed, and the frequency of submissions is really increasing. So we are also helping in that space. Over the period of next 2 days, I think this platform offers all of us a significant opportunity to really brainstorm and develop a really impactful roadmap for each one of us for the years to come. So with this, I really look forward to a very productive and engaging discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vikram. And as you truly said, as human beings, we are designed to easily adapt and make sure that we move with the times. And that's exactly what we do hope that the next 2 days over this conference allows us to do. Let's now welcome Dr. Shirish Sherlekar. He is from TCS, and he, of course, will be laying down the key objectives of the Cross Pharma. With more than 30 years of pharma technology experience, Dr. Shirish possesses strong clinical research expertise, including in areas of pharmaceutics, devices, biometrics, regulatory, AI, and ML in clinical research. A very good evening to you, Doctor, and I hope you're doing well today.
Good evening. Thanks a lot. Yes, I am. Being in Bombay, I think we are pretty much better as compared to where the snow is falling currently.
Definitely.
Hi, good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm Shirish. I'm from Mumbai. Forums like this, I think, are really useful. We had conducted one before, as Vikram alluded to, and this is the second time that we are conducting a similar forum. Typically, as we have seen, and I have been fortunate to see regulatory from a pharmaceutical perspective, from when I was a physician, people presenting to me various things, and in TCS when we work for multiple pharmaceutical clients, regulatory affairs, operations, over a period of time has unfortunately not changed much. There are changes, but there are very incremental changes which have occurred. And today, with other industries actually embracing different technologies, different ways of working, both because they are pushed to it or because they are themselves doing it, are far ahead of the pharma biotech world in adapting to these new systems and new technologies. Somehow the pharmaceutical companies, and I agree, because they are highly regulated, we deal with human beings, or medicines which deal with human beings, we have to be very careful. But at the same point of time, there is a need that we go a step ahead and embrace these new technologies, break down silos which today exist, and bring about a dramatic change. Having the benefit of working with multiple pharma companies with TCS, we see a large amount of regulatory work being done by us for these companies. And though we present it to the same regulator, we see a large amount of difference between how it is done. Though the regulations are same, interpretations may change. One of the things which we have seen as an example, which Vikram also took, is of label. Now we see label as a complete life cycle of it, right from the concept of it till the product exists. But when the work comes out, or even when it is done within the pharmaceutical company, the regulatory affairs department mainly restricts itself, or at least is seen restricting itself to the regulatory part of it. The other is more of a coordination job with others. Now, when it comes to TCS and we see it as a single unit, we see a large possibility that we can do automations, we can cut down on processes, we can improve the efficiencies, so on and so forth. Another example is take for the regulatory intelligence. It flows into the organization through all sorts of places. But unfortunately, because systems do not talk to each other, people at times also do not talk to each other from different geographies, or working in different geographies, or sitting in a place but working for different geographies. There is a difficulty in assimilating the whole information by the pharmaceutical company as an entity and get the best out of it. Forums like this, when we have discussed in the past, have talked about similar things, have echoed the same thing, but movement towards that is a bit slow, which I feel need to be enhanced to accept a particular level of efficiency and all. AI ML as a technology is heavily talked about across the board, and there is a lot of talk, but if you really see at the ground level, the implementation of these two technologies is very minuscule. And the reason is that these technologies take a long time to get established and give you the right results. It can be a simple technology of natural language processing, or extracting data, or reusing data, so on and so forth. But when you do this, it requires a bit amount of patience to get the whole thing in place to give you the correct perspective and then gain efficiencies on that. At times, what we see is people are very eager to get the benefits very quickly. And unfortunately, in that, when corners are cut or when request is coming quicker, the problem occurs that the AI system does not work as it should be, and it lands into a problem. So these are the things I think which over the next couple of 2 days that we are going to discuss. So from my perspective, if I see, there are a couple of fundamental issues. One, reusability of data is extremely low currently in the industry in terms of submissions. Processing of regulatory intelligence across the board is has to enhance or has to increase a lot. And third, coordination between various departments of the regulatory operations, affairs, intelligence, or within geographies where individual people sit or departments sit, and have to implement not only the global requirements but also the local regulations. And when they apply it and something change, reporting it back to the headquarters to make the compliance efficient is something which we look forward to. TCS as a company, with its IT backbone, I would say, because that is where TCS has grown itself, is in a position to help pharma companies understand this technology and build it up in a more efficient manner to get about the benefits. So that is what we can talk about in this conference, besides the domain area which we are seeing it as problems, which our folks will do. Similarly, from other pharma companies who have come and are going to talk, we can have a view and an exchange of idea. But at the end of the conference, if we can come up with a concrete thing that these are the 3 or 4 things which we should definitely take it forward between pharma industry and companies like us. I'm not saying only us, but any company. But if we can move forward, that would benefit the industry and the people whom we are catering to, that is the patients. And that would be my biggest take. So I look forward to that and hope that in the next 2 days we come out with some of these answers and take it forward in terms of implementation and benefiting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shirish. I truly hope that at the end, as you did say, at the end of the next 2 days, we find a middle ground and that perfect middle path for all parties involved. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jeffrey Kinzer from J&J. With roughly 25 years of pharma experience, Jeff thrives on applying analytical and technology solutions to accelerate the development of effective medicines. Jeff will delve upon the industry need for preparing and maintaining different versions of regulatory dossiers and the drivers and the history behind dossier flavors. He will also briefly discuss the promise that has been held by machine learning and structured content authoring in streamlining and simplifying the preparation and the management, especially of country-specific regulatory submissions. So a very good morning to you, Jeffrey, and thank you for coming and joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and hello from a snowy, cold Pennsylvania. I presume you can hear me okay?
We can.
Excellent. So thank you for the introduction. Over the next 10 minutes or so, just very high level, I want to provide some background on some things that we're experimenting with here on using technology to solve some of our challenges. I am in the CMC, or Chemistry Manufacturing Controls organizations here in Janssen, and one of my missions is to look at new technologies that will allow us to do things a bit differently and more efficiently going forward. So if you could move to the next slide, the next slide after this one will be fine. If you can just click one more, please. There we go. So I wanted to, sorry, previous one. There's a delay. So I want to just set the stage a little bit. I think most of you understand why we are in the situation that we are in. And all pharmas essentially have this same challenge. We work globally, which is fantastic, but introduces some challenges. The reason we work globally is manyfold. First and foremost, our patients are the center of our business. And our mission here at Janssen and Johnson & Johnson is to ensure that those medicines reach all of those that are in need. Modern supply chains are very global. COVID-19 has made that even more apparent than ever. There have been challenges with global supply chains due to border closures and things early on in the pandemic. So that is definitely a challenge as well. Companies are continuing to expand in developed markets, and to fulfill our global public health commitments, we have to work in a global environment. We do not have the luxury of focusing on a specific area. So any solution that we propose here has to meet the global need. If you could move to the next slide, please. So I don't believe I need to dwell too much on ICH, but I do want to just use this to set the stage for where we have been and where we're going. ICH is an organization which had the goal of standardizing all of the regulatory information around the globe. And I would draw you to the little footnote at the bottom of the ICH triangle directly from their guidance, is this establishes the documents and, quote, intended to be common for all regions. That's the mission of ICH. And to a large part, that has been successful. But we all know that it has not been sufficient in and of itself to ensure that there are no variations. So after 30 years of ICH making tremendous progress, there are still challenges that we are facing to achieve that truly global dossier. So if you could move to the next slide, please. These are just a few of the drivers that industry faces that drive some of the differences that we see in dossier content around the world. Internally, some of them are just historical practice. In some cases, we've always done it, so that continues. There's a desire to protect proprietary information. There's a lot of research and development that goes into these products. Global supply chain complexity, as I mentioned, is definitely an internal driver. And there are true chain differences in configurations that need to be addressed. So product characteristics may be different in different regions. Some parts of the world prefer blisters for tablets, others prefer bottles, just as a simple example. There are also a number of external drivers, and these are ones we have less control over. There are differences in regulations in different regions and countries. Despite ICH, there are still changes that are required to meet local country requirements. There's lack of regulatory flexibility in some markets, and even more challenging from a supply chain standpoint is slow or unpredictable post-approval variation timelines. If you're making a supply chain update, move new manufacturing site, for example, or changing something significant, you need to be able to predict when you're going to have global regulatory approval so that you can implement that change. And then the last one, which I'll talk most about today because it deals with some of the machine solutions that we're looking at, are the growing increase in the country-specific quality summary forms. So if you could move to the next slide, please. What this speaks to is we are constantly in a balance. We need to balance that need for customization with the reality that customization increases the complexity of our business. So there are a number of things going on in the regulatory environment that influence that balance. ICH continues to expand its influence. We have new member states coming on into ICH regularly. But despite that, regional and country differences do exist and are likely to remain for the foreseeable future. So how do we deal with those? One of the things that we can do internally and is in our control is to make sure that we minimize the versions based on true business needs. So eliminate some of that historic practice and really focus on the true business drivers for those differences. So for example, differences in product characteristics, bottles versus blisters, as I said earlier, would drive that difference. Differences in supply chain and ensure post-approval flexibility. Those are the three biggest drivers I see for the need to maintain some of these variations. What I want to focus on for the next part of the talk is some new technologies that are now available. We are experimenting with to help facilitate these version managements. And those are machine learning and intelligence and structured content authoring. Obviously, in 10 minutes, there's not enough time to go into those in depth, but I just want to give you a flavor of some of the options. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So let's take a simple example, relatively simple example. One of the challenges I mentioned is there's country-specific requirements. We see in the industry a growing rise of country-specific summary documents. So these are documents in addition to the module 3 that's specified in ICH, but in many cases are a reframing of the information that already exists in module 3. But are required. So here's just a few examples. Brazil has a PATE document. South Africa has a summary of critical regulatory elements. Russia with a normative document. Japan has had a commitment document for a number of years. China, quality appendices. And even the World Health Organization has a quality information summary. There are many others. These are just some of the major ones that drive the need to maintain information. So right now, what is required for a lot of these is someone to take the information manually from the module 3 that already exists and transcribe it into the forms. In the case of a biologic application, CMC information could be 3,000 to 4,000 pages of technical information that someone has to read and transcribe into a form. Obviously very time consuming and not very efficient. So if you could move to the next slide. How can we use technology to move forward? And the two things I want to just touch on are structured content authoring and machine intelligence, machine learning, and how those can be applied to this very specific use case. There are some other activities that are ongoing, advances in regulatory information management systems, influencing guidances and changing the regulatory environment, but those are very slow and we have a little bit less control internally than we do on the first two. So if you could move to the next slide, just talk a little bit about structured content authoring. What is it essentially? This is something that is growing in the industry. It's essentially using a variety of building blocks to create your regulatory submission. Rather than writing large amounts of narrative text or unstructured information, this allows you to tag pieces of information with metadata or other techniques so that it can be used dynamically across multiple versions and multiple regions. The advantages are it allows for much more streamlined review and tracking changes. You can make bulk updates. If the information is tagged, for example, a manufacturing site changes a name, you can update it once and it populates through the entire document. It does facilitate collaborative review. You can publish to multiple systems and formats, and most importantly, reuse content. So there are a number of initiatives going on externally as well on structured content initiatives. The US FDA, for example, has a pilot of a knowledge-aided structured applications, or CASA. The European Medicines Agency similarly is working through the IDMP process on SPORE, again, to try and add structure to some of the data that we submit every day. There are also opportunities internally to work with structured content. And structured content really has a lot of promise in making things simpler going forward. There is some learning curve and a bit of pain up front, but the investment will pay off in the version management. The other thing, just to keep things moving, if you go to the next slide, please, is machine learning. So as I mentioned, a lot of countries now require the Module 3 information to be transcribed into country-specific application forms. This is extremely time consuming with manual transcription. But what if we could do this automatically? And really, we are to the point right now where the technology is evolved, where machine learning, artificial intelligence can essentially read large sections of the module 3 information, take out the relevant pieces of information, and populate that into the forms. I think there's sometimes a perception that this is a bit science fiction. And I will say that it's not 100% yet, but there are a lot of technologies out there that allow you to at least get a substantial part of the way. And I would argue that, you know, the old expression, the enemy of perfection or enemy of good is perfection. That's really where we are right now with this concept of machine conversion. It's not perfect, but if it can get you 70% there or 80% there, imagine the amount of time that can be saved in preparing application forms, in formatting information for other country needs, and taking that information and allowing the computer to do what it's really good at, which is routine, repetitive, rule-based manipulation of data and information to streamline a lot of the regulatory operations. So I think this is something that has great potential going forward. This works hand in hand with the structured content authoring that I mentioned earlier, although I would say structured content authoring is an enabler, not a requirement for machine conversion, but it certainly does simplify things. So that is very briefly some of the technologies that are being explored right now in industry to try and tackle this very real challenge of maintaining huge amounts of data in a global environment and trying to do things as leanly and efficiently as we possibly can. So if you move to the final slide here, really this is where we are today. We have a lot of tools at our disposal. As I said, this is a growing area, and there will be changes and continual evolution in here. The need for dossier versions is unlikely to vanish completely. As I said, even if we could someday reach an environment where all of the global regulations are aligned, which I think you would all agree is certainly not likely anytime soon, if ever, there would still be drivers to maintain versions of dossiers. The global business and supply chains are becoming increasingly complex. This is just a reality of the pharmaceutical business right now. And again, we've seen what that complexity can do in COVID, when there are disruptions in one part of the supply chain and you now need to rapidly shift that supply chain and make regulatory submissions to allow you to continue supplying life-saving medicines. That's not the time when you want to be running up against a very time-consuming, labor-intensive manual transcription of data from one form to another. Technology is a strong partner here. And I think there are some solutions that we are on the cusp of in this industry that will allow us to do a lot more with these automated solutions than we're doing right now. It will continue to evolve. There will continue to be bumps in the road as we get there. But again, I think one of the points of resistance I hear from people when we talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence is it's not perfect. And that is absolutely true. It's not perfect. But even if we can get partway there, we've made a significant improvement in lifecycle management, in the time it takes to do things, and it will continue to improve. We need to continue that balance, that collaboration and partnerships that are going to be required with technology companies, with healthcare companies, with regulators, in order to continue to shape this environment to enable these types of technologies to help us to transform the business. So I know that was very, very brief, given our time constraints here, but I do think there's a lot of really exciting things going on right now in industry on some of these technologies. I'm very excited to see them continue to move forward. And I will turn it back and be happy to answer any questions if we have remaining time.
Hi, Jeff. I've been monitoring that chat box for you. And unfortunately, we can take only one right now in the interest of time. But we have a question that has come in from Suresh Sharma. And what he says is that, is there any process-based inputs or suggestion to manage reusability?
Well, I think, at least from my personal perspective, I think the structured content authoring is one of the key enablers for that reusability, because what that allows you to do is essentially create those building blocks of a regulatory submission. And then once you've got the building blocks made, it's just like it is really like a set of Legos, like I had there in the image. You can make an airplane out of Legos one day. You can rearrange those Legos the next day and make a car. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated in the regulatory world, but I would argue it's not that far-fetched that once you have the building blocks, you do then have a lot more flexibility to rearrange those building blocks to address whatever challenge you're facing today, whether it's a new requirement from a regulator, a new internal driver. The building blocks allow you to really adapt more quickly than what we can do right now with large amounts of narrative text. As I said, in some cases, these dossiers can be thousands of pages, and rewriting them for a new need is extremely time consuming.
Absolutely.
So I hope that helps.
I'm sure Suresh could let us know in that chat box. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as regulations change, so does the workflow. And so does that reporting structure as well as the business processes. Regulatory intelligence helps us to identify what products, what functions, and procedures will be affected. And it's also very imperative for us to understand then what needs to be done, where and by whom, if we want to achieve compliance. So in our next session, we have with us Mr. Vishal Mhatre from TCS, and he will be coming and sharing his opinion on evidence-based regulatory intelligence, its collection and dissemination, with a key emphasis on the concept of handling external regulatory intelligence. So over to you, Vishal, and thank you for coming and joining in today.
So today we are going to discuss about the regulatory intelligence changing the game, and the specific area we are going to talk about the collection and dissemination of regulatory information. Moving to the next slide, when from the regulatory intelligence point of view, we are going to talk about evidence-based regulatory intelligence, collection, dissemination, and example of external regulatory intelligence as a case to discuss. Moving to the next slide, which talks about a regulatory intelligence point of view. When we know that in a regulatory area, the information which is coming from the various sources, which may be coming from the external sources like regulatory guidelines, rules and regulations, and of course their internal intelligence which has been building over a period of time based on the past experience and experience which has built with the health authority questions which has been handled. So looking at the regulatory point of view, the strategy building, planning and tracking, content development, or even overall life cycle management, each and every stage, there is a lot of information which keeps on coming. And on the top of that, there is the application of regulatory analytics, which is a specific role of a skilled regulatory professional who may be working from the pharma point of view, medical devices point of view, or even from the biotechnology sector. So from filing point of view, if you look at the strategy for the product development and the strategy for the regulatory filing of a product, considering the markets where the potential is lying, all these things need to be built based on the information which is coming from the various regulatory authorities, and it can be utilized to build a regulatory strategy which may be from the product development point of view, and this strategy may be useful from even from the regulatory defining the regulatory strategy for the product development as well as for the filing point of view. And over a product life cycle, as we move ahead, it contribute in terms of country specific requirement from the authoring point of view, publishing of those submissions as per the country specific requirement, and going forward during the life cycle phase, managing those variations, managing those changes from the product point of view. There again, the contribution is coming from the various inputs which come from the changes in rules and regulations, and which ultimately leads to a sort of impact assessment which has been used by regulatory operations from the intelligence point of view, and it is also uh, get disseminated to internal stakeholders from the impact assessment point of view, so that it can be used from the day-to-day. So looking at these kind of activities which regulatory intelligence is playing. So basically the regulatory intelligence is the act of monitoring and analyzing available regulatory information, and it becomes a crucial skill for a regulatory professional to work across and provide the necessary inputs in a process of intelligence. Moving to the next slide, which talks about evidence-based regulatory intelligence. And here we are going to discuss about various sources where we actually get these kind of insights. So from the advisory meetings, which happens from the filing point of view, sponsors go to the health authority to discuss about the progress and the strategy for the product development, and try to take insights. These insights which are coming from the agency in terms of scientific advice, and the scientific advice can be utilized as a base for a future development when we are doing the product development, which may be on a similar kind of a therapeutic area, or it may be in a different kind of technologies which may be related to the product development. Similarly, the regulatory news sources and the various databases which are been providing insight in terms of how, what are the changes are there, what are the new guidelines are there. They also play a role in terms of defining or refining the product development strategy, as well as the refining the regulatory strategy of product which need to be which need to be addressed in order to adjust in line with the changes in rules and regulations and guidance which is available. So all these information which contribute and create a regulatory internal database within an organization, and based on these ad hoc queries which has been addressed related to product during the product life cycle, can also play as an important role in terms of creating those repositories, regulatory databases, and which can be used in future when there is a filing is happening across globe. So various health authority alerts, various information which has been discussed and which is made available through social media also contribute into the regulatory knowledge. But what is that more important in terms of experience which has been available in from the external sources, and the experience which is available from internal sources, that is something which is more important, and that is something which leads to the evidence based regulatory intelligence, which can be practically used for the product development and product related regulatory strategy when the filing is happening, to achieve the final goal of HA approval in time bound manner, and it will the one which will lead to the reduce the time to market. So this is evidence-based regulatory intelligence. And in the next slide, we are going to discuss about regulatory intelligence, the collections point of view. So now the data which need to be collected, that data is coming from the various focus areas within the organization, the regulatory structure within the organization. Somewhere it is more or regional in nature, and these silos of regional which collect the information which is coming from the internal sources, and also collect the information which is coming from the external repositories or external sources, which lead to a sort of a staggered impact analysis report. And because of this analysis which is happening maybe at a local level or at a regional level, it's not able to lead to a kind of a evidence-based knowledge which need to be generated out of it. So similarly, if you see that there are global policies, global procedures which are there, which are adopted from reference country. US foreign country will adopt those guidelines from US. European foreign country will adopt those guidelines from Europe. And the WHO kind of countries, they will adopt these guidelines from the WHO. But the extent of implementation which is required and the extent of the documentation or scientific studies which are required, which is not clearly defined, and itself it lead to a gap in terms of the guidelines, their implementation, and what is the exact requirement. So basically, in this gap, which normally leads to uh, 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 loss of time and financial resources, and it also leads to loss of productivity. So in order to build that quality in a process from regulatory intelligence collection point of view, I mean, there are few influences which are important from the any pharma organization, and these are the influences which I would like to talk about. These are the proactive approach rather than the reactive approach. How we can work with the existing information and create a one way of working from the across organization, so that the regulatory intelligence is something which can be centralized, and on top of that, if we can use some accelerated assessment mechanism, then it will reduce the overall processing time. The information can be clubbed and maintained in a knowledge repository, so that it can be used from creating the responses for the regulatory question, and also it can be useful for the product redefining or defining the product strategy or product development strategy. So by having this standardization, it will lead to improved compliance, and it will also give a one voice to represent the company view when it comes to regulatory intelligence, and that the knowledge which will be getting disseminated across internal stakeholders will lead to have a company identity as a knowledge sharing and a learning kind of environment, which will create a positive and dynamic company identity within the industry. So with that, this is a collection area where we would looking for having some level of standardization. Moving to the next slide, which talks about the dissemination of information. Now, if we look at that, the data has been collected, the information is analyzed, it need to be distributed as a knowledge to the internal stakeholders. It may go through subject matter expert to various regulatory operations stakeholders to handle various regulatory related filing, or even from the life cycle management point of view. Similarly, the recommendation which will go from the subject matter experts to internal stakeholders, which will have a direct impact on the policy procedures and various controls which has followed. It will help them to take a decision in terms of what is that exact impact, and with respect to that impact, what kind of a change analysis need to be done, and the change analysis which will lead to change management, so that there will be contribution which will be going to various consequences, which will be more or less the impact assessment from the, whether it is the impact on the product development from the R&D and the formulation and analytic or the packaging development point of view, or even from the global quality or global supply point of view. To achieve the ultimate goal, that ultimate goal is to achieve the regulatory compliance. So here, what is our thought process, that we should go extensively with some sort of automation, so that this process can be streamlined, and the time which is required in terms of analyzing the information and the distribution of this information is something which can be taken care of. Yeah. Moving to the next slide, I mean, we are going to talk about that one of the example of external regulatory intelligence. Now, if we look at it, that is one of the proof of concept which we have deployed for a leading pharma company, where we have taken the source in terms of the data which is coming from the various regulatory agencies, and in a part of the process we have applied some sort of analytics, which we call it as model based automation, so that the data can be collected pure, compare, refined, and it need to it's contextualized, so that we can interpret and we can present the data in terms of what are the precedent, what are the trend which has been observed from the industry point of view, considering the specific area. Similarly, we have also applied the artificial intelligence, so that we can compile country specific information, grouping these country specific from the common requirement point of view, and we can use it to suggest a strategy for the consideration. And the next part of the solution, we have also think of that how the reports can be generated, so that it can be easy to use kind of a reports which will be available to organizations, and some level of visualization can be done from the dashboard point of view, so that the information disseminated internally, and it will also able to help the meet the requirement from the report regulatory strategy report generation point of view. A next level of structuring has been done so that there will be multiple option choices will be there, and it can be used as a best strategy for defining answer to particular question. And this particular proof of concept in specifically in an area like comparing the public information in public domain with respect to prescribing information is something which we have built for one of our customer, and it is available for review. Considering the technology point of view, we have also have one more example in terms of how we have been processing internal regulatory intelligence. Now, looking at a health authority questions kind of experience, which has been built over a period of time in a pharma organization, how we can use the historical data and analyze that data so that we can create a meaningful insight trend which can be utilized for the product specific filing. It can be used for the understanding what is the agency requirement from the therapeutic area point of view, or even sometimes the specific the technology which has been used, what are these viewpoints the industry is putting across. So it can be utilized from one region to another region, and by having a created a database on top of that, we have applied analytics which can be used for the review purpose. So in subsequent presentation, in tomorrow's presentation, one of my colleague Mohit will present this particular concept in more details. With this, I will take it to the next part of the next slide. That is a question. I will be ready to answer any question specific to the concept of regulatory intelligence collection and dissemination.
All right. I have a question that has come in for you over here. It says that how will regulatory intelligence analytics help in the change of management?
Yeah. So if you look at regulatory intelligence and specifically used from the change management point of view, so basically whatever the intelligence is coming, if we are able to have some mechanism in terms of quickly process by using some level of automation on the top of it, it will be able to give some meaningful insight quickly, and then we can check what is the impact of those particular pointers in terms of policy procedures and various controls which has been followed internally. The time required in this particular process to go through the data which is coming from the multiple sources, multiple agency, if we are able to reduce that time by use of technology, I think that will contribute that we can take it quickly from the change management point of view, and that change can be implemented quickly, so that the compliance status from the product point of view, compliance status from the process point of view can be achieved quickly. So that's what my thought process in terms of where intelligence can contribute from the change management point of view.
Okay, Vikram, we have another question that has come in from Hema. And she says that are there any existing solutions available in market in support of RI? And if there are, which are they?
Yeah, I have not seen specific solutions from RI point of view, regulatory intelligence point of view, apart from the few solutions which help you to collect the data from multiple countries and make it available as a report to you. But when the data is coming internally, the uh, collected data analysis point of view or applying next level thought process in terms of meaningful insight can be built, there is no really solution existing in market, and that is the area where we are thinking that we can build something from the technology point of view. Using our expertise in a domain and technology, we have already built one solution in this area which has been implemented in health authority questions analytics, and we are thinking, or we are currently working to specifically use a next level AI on the top of it, so that we can think how the responses provided for a product during product filing in one country, in one region, can be reused for another country or in another region when the similar kind of questions are arising. So practically speaking, I have not seen any solution as such in market as far as the collection and dissemination part of the regulatory intelligence is concerned. And there is a huge potential to even for the pharma sponsors to work with the companies like TCS, where we have been working for last few years to build something using the next level technology, which may be NLP, which may be machine learning, and the next level artificial intelligence. I hope that covers the.
Yes, yes, it does, Vishal. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for our next topic for this evening, morning, depending on where you have joined in from today, labeling operations is a very complex set of activities that surrounds and supports labeling from its development through its implementation. Now, while there are challenges that do arise within labeling operations across the end-to-end labeling process, there are opportunities as well. And so Kathy Salazar from J&J will now share her perspective on some of the challenges and opportunities within labeling operations and end-to-end labeling management. Kathy possesses more than 24 years of labeling experience in areas such as labeling operations, labeling change control, graphics management, and implementation management as well. A very good morning to you, Kathy, and over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Kathy Salazar. I lead up global labeling implementation for Janssen. And I want to thank TCS and Carolyn for the opportunity to share with you today some of the challenges and opportunities that I see related to labeling operations. Can you go to the next slide? Yep, so in this session, I want to start with a brief description of our Janssen global labeling model and our focus on end-to-end labeling, and then I'll get into some of the challenges we face within labeling operations and labeling in general, as well as some of the opportunities we see to address those challenges. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so at Janssen, we have a global labeling group, the Global Labeling Center of Excellence, of which I'm a part. That's responsible for the development of the company core data sheet, or CCDS, for each of our products. The company core data sheet, if you're not familiar with labeling, it's not a label that typically gets submitted to a health authority or gets printed and packaged with product. Rather, it's a label that serves as the source document in a way for our local and regional labels, and it contains the necessary information for the safe and effective use of our products. Our group also authors the USPI and the EUPI. Those are labels that are typically used by other countries or can be used by other countries as reference labels. So we consider all of those labels primary labeling. If you follow the course of the labeling process, the CCDS basically informs, as well as local and regional regulations, the content of the local and regional labels. And then those get submitted to the health authority, approved, and then local artwork is created based off of those approved labels. And that's what ends up in the package or accompanying the product for the use by the customers. So at Janssen, those local labels are developed and managed, and the artwork by various groups. It's a cross-functional process, but regulatory takes the lead on the content and the approval of those local labels and artworks. If you go to the next slide. So the journey of the label from CCDS to local artwork, or also from the trigger to implementation, they make up the end-to-end labeling process at Janssen, and that's a big focus area for us in terms of labeling operations, with the goal being the development of clear, compliant, and error-free labeling that makes it ways to our customers in a timely manner. And it's on that pathway that we encounter both challenges and opportunities around the areas of roles and responsibilities, processes, and tools and technologies. If you can go to the next slide. Related to roles and responsibilities, unclear roles and responsibilities and limited understanding of others' roles in the process sometimes presents barriers to labeling moving through the process in an efficient way. This is a challenge that we faced at Janssen, and it might be a challenge for you and your company as well. And I think it's driven by the cross-functional nature and the complexity of the end-to-end labeling process. Because so many groups touch labeling on its journey from trigger to implementation, communication and coordination is key to ensuring labeling doesn't get held up and that the process is performing as intended. So those opportunities related to roles and responsibilities include defining and documenting roles and responsibilities, training individuals on the process, both their functions, roles, and the roles of others in the process, designating an end-to-end process owner of the labeling process, ensuring that each functional area is adequately supported by a subject matter expert, forming a core team in a way, and then also setting up labeling governance. And all of these opportunities we've been pursuing over the last couple of years at Janssen, and we've had some success in taking this approach. If you go to the next slide. The approach we've been taking is a holistic approach to end-to-end labeling, instituting training and support to functional areas in the process in order to break down barriers and improve understanding. And we've also instituted labeling governance, including a designation of a clear process owner, which in our case is GRA Business Enablement, a timely implementation cross-functional core team, and various levels of oversight, all the way from upper management across the functions involving that work in labeling, all the way down to a cross-functional forums for people that actually take the steps in the process to move labeling along. And that process and approach has been working well for us. If you go to the next slide. Because labeling is cross-functional and complex, processes should be clear and well documented. However, because of that cross-functional and complex nature, the details of the process might be spread across multiple functional area SOPs and work instructions. And there might not be clarity in terms of how the whole process works. And this was a challenge that we faced at Janssen. One way to address this, and how we've addressed it at Janssen, is to implement a global SOP on end-to-end labeling management. At the highest level, such an SOP details the end-to-end process and then points to applicable functional SOPs and work instructions that play a part in the process for the detail. In addition to the SOPs and work instructions, we've developed a labeling implementation playbook, which explains the roles, responsibilities, processes, governance, tools. It's an all-encompassing document that crosses all the functions to explain in an easy-to-understand way the labeling process, the implementation process. We've had success with this approach, so we're looking to expand this playbook idea to the end-to-end labeling process to help. Another opportunity is to identify where in the process to focus our improvement activities, because we can't do everything at once. There's lots of steps to this process. There's lots of functions involved, and we needed a way, or we need a way to identify where to focus our activities to get the most improvement. So an opportunity there is to measure your process milestones, not just looking for compliance to the end goal, right, the timely implementation, but to monitor all the steps in between and look for trends. This way, you're able to identify the areas of most opportunity and then act on those. And we've acted on those opportunities through things such as pilots, process changes, applying technology. When we're identifying the areas of most opportunity, then we can take action proactively rather than be reactive. If you go to the next slide. Can you move? Okay. Yep. And if you think of the end-to-end process, it's really a series of same steps across multiple labeling types. So for example, you create, review, approve, and release content. Then you create, review, approve, and release artwork, which involves regulatory and supply chain, and then, the packaging is created, reviewed, approved, and released with the product. So by, coordinating across those processes, having clear functional area SOPs that are aligned with the global SOP, and then monitoring performance across all of these various steps, not just the beginning and the end, but all the places in between. These are ways that you can coordinate process and identify opportunities, or the opportunities that are achievable and likely to give you improvement. And then finally, if you can move to the next slide. Finally, just thinking about what the role of technology is in end-to-end labeling. Our rule of thumb at Janssen is don't go right to the technology as a solution. That first start with the process, because you don't want to automate a bad process, right? So we spent the last couple of years, looking at our roles and making sure everyone was clear, looking at our processes. But that's not to underestimate the value of technology. Technology and tools represent a significant opportunity in end-to-end labeling, making labeling visible on its journey from trigger to implementation, and helping to make processes efficient and easier to execute, rather than taking manual approaches to everything. So related to challenges that tools and technologies could potentially solve. So we just heard about health authority requirements, or health authority information management. That's a big challenge at Janssen globally, in terms of, what are all of the health authority requirements across all of the countries, both like for timeliness of implementation, submission requirements, what's to appear in a local label. So just getting a perspective on that and getting it in a place where it's visible to everyone is a challenge. The visibility of labeling in general and where it is across such a complex process has been a challenge for us. The manual nature of some of the work that we do, quality checks on labeling, for example, in our company are largely manual. We do have a TVT or compare technology, but it's limited. And then we also have a lot of manual work that happens in terms of data entry. We have a challenge aligning our documents. So we have a source document, the CCDS, and then we have the local labels that have to align with that. How do we make sure that those labels stay aligned and not have to do that in a manual way? And then in general, the timeliness and efficiency of labeling updates. It's a complex process. There's lots of moving parts. How do we enable that process to happen more efficiently and in a more timely manner? So related to technologies for labeling operations, there's technologies around health authority information management that we're interested in. Visualization tools, I think, have a place in our world in labeling operations. Various compare technologies are of interest to us and can be opportunities to solve some of our challenges. And then automation in general, and how it applies to the labeling space or labeling operations space. That's an area of interest and opportunity for us at Janssen. And if you go to the next slide. So when you think of what is possible related to technologies and labeling operations, we just heard a speaker talk about that managing health authority information requirements and what the opportunity is there. So, again, recording and maintaining those requirements by country is just the starting point. There's the opportunity to take the feedback that we get from health authorities when we're, for example, in labeling negotiations, and capturing that intelligence and potentially applying it when we're authoring, new labels or labeling updates in the future. So, the question here for me is, can we get technology that not just collects the requirements, but also potentially learns and responds? Maybe there's a role there in authoring updated labels in an automated way that this health authority information management technology can provide. So I think that is something that is very interesting. Visualization of, where is the data related to end-to-end labeling? How do you know where your label is in the process so you don't get the label stuck somewhere and then you don't implement a critical change? That's of high interest and a high area of opportunity related to labeling operations. So there are tools that are available for this. For example, in Janssen, we use Tableau. At one point, we were looking for an end-to-end tracking tool that took all of the labeling steps to end and just track them in one system. And we weren't really successful in finding a good, robust tool to do that. So in lieu of that, we turned to Tableau. And actually, Tableau works very well for us. And it really makes me question whether we really even need an end-to-end labeling tool for tracking when we can use a tool like Tableau to sit on top of all the systems and pull the data and visualize it in a way that we can make good decisions and get good information about the labeling process. So, that's my key question around visualization technology. I will say that, I do like the visualization tools. They're nimble, they're easy to expand. You can change things as needed versus getting a large system that has to be validated and it's just takes so long to implement a system. So I think the visualization technologies are very intriguing and we've had success with those. Compare technology. So we want to make sure our labels are correct, right? And we're building them from other documents. So what technologies are out there that help us make sure that our labels are correct, based on the source documents, that they're consistent across like documents, and that our documents are robust and compliant with our health authority requirements. So typically you might think of a tool like a comparator tool, like we have a tool, a TVT tool, right? But I'm thinking beyond that. I'm thinking about, is there a technology, for example, that would have all of a country's health authority requirements built into it? And then when you're checking your document, you're checking not just that document A matches document B, except for the changes that you made, but that the document is also consistent with your health authority requirements or your formatting requirements. Or even that a document that are two dissimilar documents. So it's not a USPI to a USPI, for example. It's a CCDS, which is one type of document, to a local label, which is formatted completely differently. But the concepts have to be similar. Is there a technology that would have the intelligence to be able to interpret and make that match and tell us that, yes, that's a match, or no, it's not a match, without having to manually do that compare? So I think that for me is the larger opportunity with compare technologies. Can you find technologies that don't just do the compare like to like, but also can do a little more in-depth comparison and really help make that label review process faster and more efficient? And then finally, just automation in general. Under automation, I include structured content authoring that Jeff talked about, because that's a big thing for us in labeling as well. We have a lot of interest in structured content authoring. It's just so big, right? And our labels are built from, other departments' documents as well, like a clinical overview, right? So we see that there's an opportunity there, but I also mean automation of the little things as well. We have a cross-functional process. We move a lot of information from one system to another. We have transactions that have to happen. Can we use automation to, automate some of those transactions? So you take the people out of it, and the, really simple transactions just become something that a machine or a bot does, and you're not taking a person's time and skill set who could be developing a label to do these more transactional activities. So that's where we think automation has a lot of application in labeling. It's just not clear exactly, how it fits. And so, we have a lot of interest in, which companies or our companies automating labeling development. And I think that really speaks to the structured content authoring piece. Meetings like this are great because I think when you think of the labeling operations and the challenges and opportunities, the opportunities and challenges that we face, I'm guessing most companies face similar challenges. So, is there an opportunity for us collectively to define use cases for labeling related to technologies? What technologies are out there? What's just conceptual and what's actually being used, and how successful are these technologies? What's the vendor landscape look like? When we have a team for data sciences, and labeling is part of that labeling operations. And some of the technologies apply themselves really well to labeling, and some it's a little harder to visualize exactly how this would fit. We sense there's an opportunity here, but what does it actually look like? Getting to that piece is a bit of a challenge. And so I think meetings like this are very valuable because you can share your challenges, you can share the opportunities, you can share, what different companies are looking at and working on, and collectively these common needs can be, communicated to our vendor partners, and maybe at the end of the day, we all win. So I think that was the end of my presentation. I don't know if there's time for questions.
Well, actually, Kathy, we do have a question, but through your presentation, you did land up answering the one that did come in over here in the box as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have given an answer to that, but ladies and gentlemen, if you do have something, you can always put that in the chat box. And later we can have Kathy come in and answer that for you. Hi, Kathleen. What standardization challenges do you see in labeling and how technology can help?
Well, I mean, the standardization, for example, against health authority requirements to make sure our labels are compliant with the different health authority requirements. It's, there's the health authority regulations, but sometimes we also find out, especially, my group handles U.S. implementation, and we find out that, there's the regulations, how the regulations read that things should be set up, for example, but sometimes, for a particular product, a particular review division, they want it differently for some reason, right? So it's, keeping track of what's required from a health authority, but also for a particular product, we find that challenging. I think there's an opportunity there to, under the health authority information management piece, to maybe collect all of that information, health authority requirements plus what's special about a given product, a given label, a given expectation by a health authority, so that we're not constantly going back to the table and saying, okay, we're going to set it up this way, and then, oh, no, it's this product, it has to be a different way. A lot of our knowledge is collective and it's historic, and we've had people that have worked in labeling for a long time and they just know this. But, getting that out somewhere where that information is visible and shared, I think, is an opportunity.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I can see that Mr. Arvind Kumar says thanks as well. You have answered that question well for him. Well, you have an absolutely wonderful day, and thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, folks, it's commonly said that change is the only constant. Progressive change, now that is a sign of growth. However, if regulatory changes are not managed effectively, pharmaceutical companies always will stand vulnerable to that risk of non-compliance. So to overcome such challenges and the associated risks, organizations will need to analyze. They'll need to analyze their existing regulatory processes, workflows, identify operations and technological gaps, and of course, adopt new process-centric approaches. And that's what we will be dealing with our next session. It's now my pleasure to introduce Vijaya Kumar, a domain expert from TCS with 17 plus years of expertise in regulatory R&D and CMC strategies for small molecules. And he will be coming and sharing his views on advancement in process changes and adopting novel technologies. A very good evening, Mr. Kumar, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prashia. Thanks for a very brief and a nice starting point for my session. Getting into next slide. Yeah. Next one. I would like to start my presentation with a quote from Barack Obama, and I quote, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we have been waiting for, and we are the change that we see." I unquote. With that, I would like to start my session, and going to the main topic. Next slide. Yeah. Uh, as you know, we all face a transformation every day, right? So be it specific to process changes, outdated technologies, change in regulations, and expect change for pre or post approvals during life cycle of a drug product. And we each deal with change differently, indeed. And in past, a major focus was on performance and streamlining the processes and systems with attention on roles and responsibilities along with the geographic locations. In current scenario, majority of the pharmaceutical giants are looking for journey towards productive change, majorly to focus to improve on efficiencies, maintain compliance with new standards, and gain greater internal alignment along with past focused points. So with this, pharma industry identified new priorities with the areas to be addressed, keeping balance with the performance, streamlining the regulatory operations, and could better manage challenges facing the industry by improving regulatory operations. In my next slide, I'm going to detail about the value drivers to leverage this requirement. Yeah. So as we all know, regulatory affairs has emerged as key function that curates R&D data and submits information as a coherent with whole to health authorities and maintain licenses on the market. And the modern regulatory information has become a force for strategic advantage as the industry is being held to increasingly high standards designed to improve patient safety and efficacy. It is being asked by majority of the stakeholders to take a greater enabling role as a regulatory personnel. And looking into that, global regulatory teams need to balance business, financial, and technology drivers. So if I take the business drivers such as tracking initiatives, sharing information, and these things will help to reduce regulatory deliverable misses, operational efficiency, improve quality, and also improve compliance. Again, if we look for financial drivers, they will reduce the total cost. And also the technical drivers such as digital and automations will embrace innovation. So with this strong, change or the new technology with the process-related orientations, there are some business drivers like mobile apps in regulatory for tracking initiatives, online sharing information, and also QCing, reusability of the data using internal repositories for timely obtaining source documents, and strategies have brought us a significant change in the value drivers and to improve service and also indeed reduce the cost. And if organizations don't begin transitioning at right time, it is certain that one will behind the futuristic trends. It is important to look the continuous investments and in disruptive cognitive solutions. So this is the bottom line I would like to say through these drivers. And building the a dynamic regulatory insight is a continuous journey, of course, and the change is constant. And these interrelated initiatives with the regulatory metrics, and it is vital to prosper in smarter regulatory insights, where pharmaceutical organizations achieve productivity advantages. And looking into these details, in my next slide, I'm going to detail the need of this adaptive mindset in regulatory. Yeah. So as we all know, as a regulatory person, that adaptive mindset is one of the key requirements that we need to maintain a consistency in our professional life. And on day-to-day basis, we deal with hyper-complex situations with ever-changing regulations. If you see picture one, we could observe some key messages connecting to the current regulatory environment. In regulatory affairs, we don't have the luxury of responding to hyper complexity with the usual way of thinking. For any pre or post approval changes, one need to remember the dynamics of local health authority regulations and also the product development complexities. And in turn, we can't apply same approach for other products considering its own dynamics. So that's the key we could gather from picture one. And again, in picture two, depicting one more regulatory scenario, which depicts as an example where we have no control over how the regulations are evolving. And we do have a control over dynamic planners, integrators, and solvers as a key regulatory personnel. And in practical scenario, sometimes we need to adopt the agency recommendations. And in some scenarios, we need to provide a rationale for the proposal that we made against the agency recommendations. Hence, balancing the change with adaptive mindset is the key. Now, in my next slide, let us see how the ongoing challenges could be converted into opportunities through progressive mindset. And as Freshia started with her note, I quote again, challenges are truly opportunities. And opportunities to grow and learn, to strengthen ourselves, to test ourselves and attain it as per industry needs. As we all witnessed, the ongoing pandemic has changed the dynamics of work for millions. The current crisis is far from positive, but it does not open new opportunities to change your habits or to improve well-being. Crisis breeds opportunity, as they say, and it holds true. Nowadays, some of the challenges like evolving regulations, harmonization of regulatory requirements, complexities of product lifecycle, and rationalization of costs are some of the enduring challenges. These in turn creating a wide opportunities with the regulatory environment. One can handle the evolving regulations through predictive regulatory approach. By application of dynamic regulatory insights referred in my earlier slides, one could turn the challenges into opportunities. Similarly, considering the harmonization of regulatory requirements, enabling application by creating once and publish everywhere is also one of the area where we can turn this challenge into an opportunity. And for this, harmonization of a dossier is one of such example, and organizations need to think differently about gathering the content, make document presentation types in order to make it easier to write content across multiple channels. If author just have to update their product description once in one system and it updates wherever their product is exposed to the user, it is clearly as an advantage where we can say it's an opportunity for us to look into. And complexities of product lifecycle challenges could be handled through, convertible models by utilizing global talent with the help of functional service providers or by operating models like transactional based or deliverable based models, or considering the talent availability at same time zone through trainings and enabling their skill set. In order to reduce the operations cost, all these things will help to get into streamline as an opportunity. So through cross-training, one can attain the desired outcomes on time-to-time basis. Similarly, rationalization of cost could be better handled through enabling new technologies, which in turn could realize enhanced quality, increase in operational speed, and reduce the cost. So in my next slide, looking into the regulatory transformation. So in a knowledge and a data-oriented function like regulatory, We need to upgrade ourselves with change in regulations and adopting with change in technologies. This regulatory transformation is expected to significantly reduce the number of and even eliminate the tasks that are previously required for submissions planning through to approval. And it is also anticipated that many of the remaining tasks will be simplified. Most of the company's legacy systems were replaced with modern and cloud platforms. Looking into that, so at each step of regulatory affairs activities, keep value drivers in mind when making decisions and significantly reduce the number of tasks previously required for submissions planning through its approval. And simplification of the tasks by replacing the technologies and eliminate the tasks if possible from previously required for submissions and planning through to approval. Take always bold step and also take calculated decisions. So being a regulator, this is the area we need to keep that calculated decisions to keep the momentum at par with the regulations and beyond. And process and technology is to achieve the goals is one of the area. And it is also amazing how we each have our resiliency, like, and also looking into the ability to cover from or adjusting easily to change. All these things comes with the practical practice and practice regulatory transformation with a positive approach and embrace change as always, being a regulatory personnel and as an opportunity for continuous renewal and growth for better and smarter regulatory operations. So with this, I uh, close the note and would like to have some questions if you have anything. Yep.
Yes, we have one question that has come in where they are asking that can you elaborate on the different convertible models?
Yeah. So different convertible models, as I said, if we see the type of the business, how it is converting, so considering the globalization, so we need to cross-train the associates, and also we need to go with the different business models, like FTE-based model or transactional-based models to get the cost benefit here. And also we need to look for increasing the associate competency and talent with cross training, and so that people can take maximum jobs and get the deliverables on time. So these kind of convertible models will help, to meet the requirements at par with the current changes. Yeah.
All right, we're just going to see if we have any more questions that are coming in. And like I said earlier, ladies and gentlemen, we'd always love to hear from each and every one of you. If you do have any suggestions as well, please do make sure that you do put that in our chat box over here. We have Ryan who has put in something. And Ryan says that, do you have any examples of tasks that you've eliminated to improve regulatory ops process?
Yes, indeed. As I said in my these business drivers or value drivers, there are some mobile apps. I'll take one example here. In current scenario, in regulatory area, there is a challenge in tracking the activities. And every time we cannot see each and every product, its current status of that product. And certain mobile apps, having a single app tracking for all your deliverables across the globe will ease the operations and also give the broader visibility to that, and also save a lot of time instead of chasing with the individuals, instead of getting the inputs. That single mobile app would able to get all the inputs. Similarly, tracking initiatives and online QCing, so that you can improve your I can say the quality of the deliverables and reusability of the data using structured content approaches or different approaches by connecting different repositories, having all the data into centralized repositories. So such type of drivers could able to enhance the requirements. Yeah, I think I addressed your question.
Yes, yes. And we have another one that has also come in from Deborah, and she asks that what challenges do you think will be faced when introducing a cross-talent model?
Yeah, cross talent model, if we go with a high complex training or the process centric approach, that we could able to see some challenges. But starting with the low complex activities and incrementally, if we train the associate with the reference to the process, so they could able to come up with the need. So identifying the training module at right time and periodic enhancement of their training skills to cross train the associate could able to yield long term results. That I could say.
All right. Well, I think that's about enough time also that we have over here. Deborah says a big thank you as well for answering her question. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. You have a wonderful evening ahead. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to take this moment and an opportunity to express our sincere thank you to our organizers for providing such a great platform where each and every one of you could come in, tune in, amalgamate, share your thoughts and ideas, and of course, our distinguished speakers for their industry mapped yet very practical narratives on these various industry topics. We truly hope that you have gained the information that you were looking for, and we also looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you. But before anything, before we close, I'd like to now call upon Dr. Hilde to summarize the event and share our next steps forward.
Thank you, Freysia. And completely agree that we had really some good speakers and thoughtful ideas shared during this session. And thank you also for being such an engaging host. Now, let me summarize some of the topics discussed today. So we started with Jeffrey Kinzer from Janssen. And Jeff really introduced us in the topic of dossier reusability and how machine learning and structured content authoring can enable a more streamlined and simplified regulatory dossier management across the different versions and country-specific submissions. What Jeff also highlighted was the importance of close partnerships and collaborations between technologies and partners. Next, we had Vishal Matra from TCS, and Vishal showed us really the power of evidence-based regulatory intelligence and also how technology can facilitate the collection across various internal and external regulatory sources, but also how can technology improve the dissemination of regulatory information between the different stakeholders, and this via module-based automation and artificial intelligence. And Vishal ended with an example of an external regulatory intelligence solution. As third speaker then on our agenda, we had Kathy Salazar and from Janssen, and she really embedded us in the complex world of label activities and how we can change the numerous challenges in labeling operations and end-to-end labeling management into opportunities. And this by using technology, automation, comparisons, and visualization tools. It was a very impactful session, and with also a call out of Kathy at the end to industry and technology to come together and share experiences and jointly handle these challenges in the labeling world. And last week, we just heard Vijaya Kumar from TCS, and Vijaya highlighted the need for having an adaptive mindset in regulatory operations, as like he mentioned, change is the only constant and progressive change is a sign of growth. Vijaya also showed us how business, financial, technology and value drivers can be combined to create smart regulatory insights, as well as how can we improve efficiency via streamlining. So a big thank you to all the speakers. And we hope that this information sharing can help you to address any regulatory challenges that you might have within your organization. And in case of any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the speakers or also to the organizing committee, Mohit, Vishal, and myself, and we will be very pleased to answer any questions you might have and to help you deploy the next generation of regulatory activities enabled by technology within your company. And with this is the end of the day 1 session, and I would warmly welcome you again for the day 2 session of tomorrow. And this tomorrow session will focus on some real use cases of what we discussed today, but also elaborate on some specific technology implementations. So looking forward to see you tomorrow. Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Mohit Gupta from TCS to formally open day 2 of our Cross Pharma event. Mohit leads the ADD Regulatory Life Sciences Solution and brings in 20 plus years of successful life sciences solutions, of successful IT life science implementations across various domains. A very good evening, Mohit.
Thank you, Felicia, for setting up the tone. Am I audible?
Yes,
okay.
you are.
Thank you. A lot of pressure put in place by setting up the context the way you have, brains behind all this thing. It's a partnership that we have been able to count on to get to this event. I would like to acknowledge Chris Lee for initiating this in 2019 as a first regulatory cross pharma. While last year we were planning to do this event, there was a washout due to COVID, lockdowns, and learning our ways in how to work in lockdown. But I would like to surely acknowledge Caroline from Janssen and the complete Janssen team for supporting us and partnering with us this year to bring this event. The first virtual cross pharma held by us post the lockdown gets over. I would like to take a few minutes to just acknowledge all our esteemed speakers from yesterday and having a very, very interesting discussion on various topics. For the interest of some of you who might not have joined yesterday, we had covered various topics, starting from dossier reusability, the content reusability of dossiers, and the implementation approaches of enabling those reusability using artificial intelligence, structured content management, some of those which we will also discuss in our session today on real-time use cases associated with it, high-level designs associated with it. That's what we will also cover today. Another session which was very interesting was on regulatory intelligence, how we enable the collections and dissemination of regulatory intelligence, various forms of intelligence covering information coming in from external parties, journals, newsletters, health authority agencies, which is very important to make decisions related to products and their submissions. We continued the discussion yesterday on labeling operations, which is a highly spoken topic of recent times. A lot of improvements are being done by various organizations based on our interactions with our sponsors. We have come to know of so many things. Many of those were discussed, and new things were also shared in the session on how organization can leverage this experience which was shared. Will be very interesting to see. We concluded the session yesterday with our last topic, which was on overall regulatory operations, embracing change to manage the regulatory operations. and many examples on how we could bring efficiencies in overall regulatory operations. In today's session, we will focus on topics very much related to technology, but linking to our regulatory space. How we can embrace innovation, we discussed that, but we'll continue to explore on that. And we will discuss many use cases that will connect us back to the topics that we had discussed yesterday. I hope all of you would be able to relate to them and share your views and also provide inputs. Due to this virtual nature, we would request you to type your inputs, and if you would like to surely speak, raise your hand. That way we can manage one speaker at a time in this kind of virtual event. But that would be very interesting to hear views from all of you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's kick off day 2 right over here with our first speaker. It truly is my pleasure to welcome Chris Lee from Organon, a Merck company, to spend a few minutes explaining how technology can drive innovation, especially in regulatory affairs. Chris possesses more than 25 years of diverse experience through regulatory affairs, clinical operations, as well as safety and information technology and project management. He's played a key role in envisioning and conceptualizing the Cross Pharma event, and it is through his innovative zeal as well as professional endeavor that we have been able to successfully host such theory to practice initiatives. A very good morning, Chris, and over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I just want to thank Janssen and TCS for hosting this innovation forum. I think it's really important, and we could talk a little bit about innovation. I probably know a lot of the folks on the line. Prior to taking this role at Organon, I was a vice president of regulatory operations at Merck, and I don't know if most of you know, but we're getting ready to spin off as our own independent company from Merck, and that company is called Organon. So we're reviving that Organon name, and we're going to be a company that's going to have roughly 10,000 people in it, and we're going to have a lot of physical locations, just like Merck does, and we're also bringing roughly about $6.5 billion in revenue. So it's going to be an interesting journey, and our emphasis will be in the women's health space, and we'll have some biosimilars partnerships that we have. So I wanted to kind of set some context there, and in terms of innovation, just going through this process, right? And I'll step through some of this, and then I'll talk a little bit about that journey and how it ties back to having to really be innovative. And these are just some principles here, that I've worked with TCS over the years, and we believe in these principles. One, obviously continuously to push management to focus towards innovation, because innovation should come from everywhere in the organization, right? It's not just limited, obviously, to, it's not a top-down exercise. Actually, if it was a top-down exercise, it probably would fail. So we need innovation to come from every corners of the organization. You need to have a framework and atmosphere to innovate. So an example of that at Merck, and we'll carry this forward into Organon, is this concept of an innovation council. So we hold an innovation council, and we invite folks from the business to come and bring ideas. And I know there's some colleagues, I saw some names pop up here, that are actually regulatory strategists that are dialed into this, that actually brought innovative ideas. And we use that council to be able to innovate in an unencumbered way, right? Most of us know that sometimes it's challenging, right? In budget constrained environments or resource constrained environments to get IT to work with us on this. But we had a great IT department. We'll have a great IT department at Organon, and they worked with TCS to do these quick hit kind of agile, proofs of concept. Go do it. Takes a couple weeks, come back. Okay, it looks like that idea looks promising. We would run and we would invest in it. So that's just an example of a framework. The other piece too to think about is how do you build kind of cross, vendor innovation, and we work through that, and we'll continue to do that at Organon, where we have, obviously independent ecosystems that tie, some of this tech innovation to our BPO processes, but we also want to facilitate an ecosystem which consists of different, players and bring them together and drive the best innovation we can. Obviously, identifying low-hanging fruit is always good to do, because if you just focus on these multi-year, big budget innovations, those typically have a high risk of failure or missing the mark or not meeting expectations. So it really is helpful to go after small wins, little hits that add quick value to the organization. I mentioned agile. So yeah, definitely agile development and implementation of ideas. And TCS is a partner for us, and along with our IT groups, actually help drive that. And and they've been driving the business to think differently, to think, go do quick hit innovation, quick hit ideas. And that way, if it doesn't work, you kind of, and they use the term fail fast all the time, right? And that's what we try to do. Technology advancements can support innovation in existing processes. We all know this. We're all living this, right, as an industry. And I really, truly believe that in the future, the winners in this space, because we see a lot of non-traditional competitors coming into each other's space, right? So if we look at the BPO space, where we're talking about right now, it is merging with getting into the software vendors areas in their domains. And I truly believe that organizations like TCS can really win at that game, because they can tie the technical piece, the complexities of the technical piece with the BPO and the execution of the BPO services, and then ultimately integrate that into a single stream where, if I am using TCS as a partner to publish my submissions, then I don't need to have a publishing tool. I don't need to have a doc management system. I don't need those expenses, because it comes with the service. And we're not that far away from that, because we're seeing that happen right now. So I wanted to kind of share, tying it back to innovation, a journey that I've gone through, while working on this spinoff, right? And that started back in January 2019. I was asked by the head of R&D to lead that for R&D to assess if it was viable to spin off these products and create a new company. And the first thing I did was I sat back and I reflected, and I said, hey, is this an opportunity for innovation, or do we just take the easy road and just kind of copy and paste what we have currently at Merck? And I chose to not take the path well traveled. I said, I'm going to push on this. I don't know if it'll make it through the, some of the gauntlets, but I thought differently about that. And in doing that, we're going to be launching a little different model, at scale at Organon. And I wanted to share that with you guys. So I'm going to put that on the screen, and then that'll help us tie it back to BPO and innovation and the things that we're okay. So if you can see here, so by thinking differently and driving the team differently, when we were working through this process, I put forward a different operating model. So I won't take you through the whole operating model, but we won't have any research or discovery to begin with, but we'll have a pillar that will be quality and compliance, which everyone is familiar with, but it'll be integrated. We'll have a regulatory safety integrated pillar that will execute on regulatory and safety at the affiliate level. We'll also have a medical affairs organization, and we'll have a CMO organization where all the medical capabilities will sit. And then we'll have a fifth pillar, which is strategic operations, which is on this slide here. And this is the organization that I lead. So if you look at this and you think about innovation, because I know the things we talked about at the first meeting that we had is how do we kind of drive integration. I know you guys talked about labeling yesterday, and I know at the last meeting I kind of shared how we were really driving integration in labeling, not just to the affiliates, not just in regulatory affairs, but into manufacturing and into commercial for promotional materials. And you can take that same mindset and you can apply that here. So imagine, usually we have all this vertical integration, right, in our companies, and then there's vertical innovation, right, in each of these areas. But what this model does is this gives us the opportunity to get that horizontal integration, and going from left to right with regulatory operations. Traditional reg ops is in there, publishing of submissions. We'll have planning of the submissions in there, and then we'll also have the writing group. So those capabilities are in there, and then labeling and ad promo, ClinOps, IM and digital. That's the folks that focus on obviously driving digital across R&D, BD, PV licensing, vendor management, enterprise portfolio project management, and pharmacovigilance operations. So this is, and I haven't seen this model at scale. That's why I feel like it's relatively novel. Now you guys can call me on that if you have seen it at scale, but I know how most pharma companies run, and they're not doing this yet, at least not yet. So with this in mind, that innovation piece is critical for our success, because the way we've set up our company is we're going to rely heavily on BPO and externalization, with BPOs executing our a certain level of our process, and then CROs executing on our clinical trial execution. But as you can see here, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that horizontal integration. So most of us that are on the phone now are probably in the, in the RIM space and the regulatory space. Maybe I don't know how many people are in the PV space, but what this is going to give us an opportunity to do, and we're going to partner closely with TCS on this, is how do we best integrate the BPO process, for things that we have being executed upon by our business partner TCS, and then how do we tie together the information management ecosystems, and I have Jason Moyer, who I think is on the line right now, who will be accountable for doing that at Organon around the IM and digital piece. So I just wanted to share this with you, because this was the result of innovation and thinking differently, to be honest with you, it really wasn't necessarily probably even a safe thing to do in a company, in a larger pharma company, but it made it through the gauntlet. So I wanted to give you guys some visibility into that. But we're going to be doing a lot of thinking and partnering with TCS to tie that horizontal integration, because vertical integration comes naturally, right? And innovation occurs in those verticals. But what happens in your traditional pharma company, and I know this because I've been in, this will be my fourth pharma company, and I've been in all, I was at Pfizer, I was at Amgen, I was at Merck, and you get that vertical innovation, but that innovation doesn't necessarily connect horizontally. So I think that's the biggest challenge that me and my team and that the R&D leadership team will have to address and face. And I think as we go through that journey, maybe at the next virtual one, I can, maybe give an update or something. But I wanted to expose, the teams, that's on the line right now, to how, thinking differently drove a different model of a company that's going to be publicly traded as of June.
Okay, we have a question coming in from Suresh. Suresh Sharma has his hand up over there.
Okay.
Thank you, Vireshia. Hi, Chris. This is Suresh from TCS. First of all, thanks for being a part of this virtual event and setting the context about innovation and transformation in regulatory. My question is, innovation comes with a lot of change management in the way regulatory teams have been working for years globally, both within as well as across the functions. According to you, Chris, what are some of the organizational change management initiatives Merck or Organon has embarked, or any sponsor should keep in mind to address this dimension?
Yeah, I think in terms of implementing the Innovation Council, I think we kind of got off to a slow start. So when you look at this, the piece that was a little bit challenging for us, because I had done this before at my previous company, and just kind of thinking back on things that I could have done better or we could have done better, really would have been more of that change management, not only with the business in terms of having people understand the intent of the of the Innovation Council, but also with our partners in the IT organization. Because I think, when I reflect on that, I think that IT may have had a little bit of an adverse reaction, and I think it was fair for them to do so, because the intent was not to obviously replace our IT organization, but it was to get TCS partnered with our IT organization and to experiment and explore and in an unrestricted and unencumbered way. So I would say those are that was some learnings, and I would say that if you do that Innovation Council, be clear about it, because once we got that clarity, once again, at Merck it was new, and once we got that clarity, I mean, we had people that were people in the business bringing really great ideas that actually turned into to significant solutions. And then also on the IT front, our internal IT did an amazing job partnering with TCS and getting this rolling. But I would say those are probably two stakeholders and two areas that I would spend some time reflecting on and ensuring that there's alignment, that everyone understands the intent of the council.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, so the question from Deborah is, how will you ensure innovation in the interfaces with the other pillars, especially the RAPV strategic pillars? So we're going to drive that innovation once again through the Innovation Council, and then also through my connectivity with my peers on the R&D leadership team. So I think that's going to be critical, because we want innovation coming in from everywhere in the organization. And on the PV front, we're pretty tightly integrated, because I'll have all the operational capabilities. So we've been very fortunate to hire a CSO that I worked with in the past that is very innovative. I mean, if you were to talk to him, you wouldn't even know he was a physician. You would think he's like an IT guy. And so a lot of times your constraints around change and innovation are based on people's personalities and tolerance for risk. So and both of the leaders in both of those organizations, they are very innovative, and they want to do things differently compared to a lot of folks that I've had before. So don't underestimate that need and all these other pillars. To have them be willing participants, and not only willing participants, but owners and drivers of the innovation process. And I think the other piece, when you saw that IM Digital capability in my organization, Jason is accountable for having people that know each of those verticals, and then he's accountable for doing the integration. So there's not going to be any disconnect that the people that sit in my organization don't understand their pillars. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out, and you have a wonderful day. Well, folks, let me now call upon Joseph Markman from J&J. Joe is a principal data science lead for global regulatory affairs. And in his session, Joe will talk about the integration of automation and artificial intelligence in the form of intelligent automation, and discuss the potential of these technologies to drive regulatory operations, efficiency, intelligence generation, as well as serve as a catalyst to accelerate the pharmaceutical development process. So a very good morning, Joseph.
Thanks, Risha. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Joe Markman, and I'm the Principal Data Science Lead for Janssen's Regulatory Affairs. I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today on the use of intelligent automation and how it may be leveraged to empower regulatory processes as well as intelligence generation. In my role as the data science lead, part of my focus is to identify opportunities to generate or enhance efficiencies in regulatory operations. Though efficiency can be generated in a number of sources, perhaps the greatest impact can be created through the use of technology solutions. These solutions include things like robotic process automation, or RPA, and artificial intelligence, or AI. In addition to internal process efficiency gains, we are also considering and preparing for how these tools may support information exchange. Prior slide still. With health authorities. As you know, regulatory authorities are beginning to shift from being document-driven to data-driven organizations. Meeting the needs of this transition may be accomplished in part through these technologies. Today's discussion will give us a chance to look beyond RPA and AI and consider how the integration of these technologies through intelligent automation will further enhance the work that we perform as regulatory professionals. Next slide, please. So automation in its various forms has been used by nearly every industry, with its early origins helping to drive the first industrial revolution. Interestingly, robots are not a new concept either, as the first was unveiled in 1939 at the World's Fair. This robot, named Electro, could be directed with simple human commands to walk, smoke cigarettes, and blow balloons. The idea of generating intelligence from inanimate objects has also been around for a very long time. The beginnings of modern AI can be traced back to classical philosophers' attempts to describe human thinking as symbolic systems. However, the field of AI was not formally founded until 1956. Today, we are part of the fourth industrial revolution, which is characterized by the merging of physical, digital, as well as biologic worlds. In this transformative and strategic period, scale is everything. And that can only be truly addressed through the convergence of automation and AI, which we know as intelligent automation. Intelligent automation lets us deal at scale with low-hanging fruit of simple repetitive tasks, as well as the higher-hanging fruit of the problems we face every day dealing with complex and data-driven processes. Intelligent automation combines the task of execution of RPA with the machine learning and analysis capabilities, as well as cognitive technologies. These include things like computer vision, natural language processing, as well as fuzzy logic. Next slide. So in comparison to traditional automation, intelligent automation assists with each step in the automation cycle, learning as the tasks or processes are repeated. As a result, cycles continue to improve over time. As an example, cognitive bots can reason and make decisions, learning on the job to become valuable resources in your human digital workforce. Perhaps one of the greatest attributes of intelligent automation is that it creates the opportunity to reimagine how businesses operate. These include things like seamlessly integrating technology, work processes, and people. Let's look at a few examples. End-to-end business process automation has the potential to reduce human interaction, increase processing speed, and regularize or standardize outputs, saving both time and money. Operational obstacles can be reduced by applying cognitive automation to address unstructured, inconsistent processes and data. Complex data can be organized and processed from unstructured sources, which include those big and unwieldy data inputs that we deal with on a regular basis. Errors and exceptions may be minimized by improving efficiency and accuracy of both routine tasks as well as complex procedures. Over time, intelligent bots continue to decrease exceptions by self-learning how to handle them on their own. And perhaps the crowd favorite from this group of regulatory professionals, maximize compliance through consistent application of regulatory statutes, industry standards, as well as best practices. Next slide. The opportunity for utilization within pharma is vast and spans many parts of the business. Clearly, our focus or interest is in the application within the regulatory space. And as we've seen, the regulatory environment is evolving rapidly. To mitigate compliance risks associated with these changes, IA offers the opportunity to improve adherence within this changing environment. But before getting into the regulatory application, let's look at a real-world and rapidly growing area within drug development that requires careful management to realize the value of the information that the source contains. As has been reported by TCS and others, genomics research is generating volumes of information that are doubling almost every 7 months. This volume of data can be crippling to our current IT infrastructure, let alone those who are trying to extract insight from it. Through IA processes, hypotheses from genomics data can be generated, tested, and visualized at a rate that would be impossible for human research alone. This not only expedites decision-making processes, but also helps to create integration across the R&D value chain. Next slide. So we've talked about IA in concept, its broad industry potential, and a few examples in pharma. But let's look at some practical applications in the regulatory operations space to drive efficiency, standardization, as well as risk mitigation. As you are aware, there are many processes within regulatory operations, each with varying needs and nuances. Therefore, each process presents its own unique opportunity to enhance quality and efficiency. Let's take a look at a couple of these scenarios where technology could potentially disrupt traditional regulatory processes. So the first would be health authority correspondence processing. As many of you are aware, the timely recording of submission approval dates or tracking health authority questions can be challenging when information is received by affiliates needing deciphering and translating before being entered into regulatory systems. The potential intelligent automation solution would be to translate and decipher letters without the need for local affiliates intervention and automatically enter information into regulatory information management systems for stakeholders to act upon. These potential benefits would include things like same-day entry of submission approvals, and as well as the execution of health authority question tasks. We also would expect reduction in effort resulting in cost savings, as well as potential increased compliance and regain confidence in the overall system. There's over the course of the past day or so, there's also been a few discussions pertaining to label authoring and tracking. Managing and providing traceability of the rollout of global label changes updates is onerous. These are complicated by language nuances, implementation considerations, and replicated data terms across multiple documents. This leads to a high risk of product label inconsistencies. The potential intelligent automation solution would be to map and maintain global local terms and provide end-to-end traceability with ongoing improvement in its application over time. The potential benefits here would be reduced effort of reviews and handoffs to multiple affiliates, increased speed in getting updated information to patients, as well as improved compliance with a single source of registered information. And there are many others. Next slide. So in addition to operational efficiency gains, we also introduced the concept of IA to support intelligence generation. Regulatory intelligence is the process of collecting, curating, managing, and interpreting changing regulatory requirements, as well as competitive intelligence, consumption of public data, as well as internal information. Each source has a bearing on regulatory strategies, operations, as well as potential health authority submissions. Today, for most companies, the process of gathering, monitoring, and reporting on this information can be highly manual, inconsistent, and complex. The result may be incomplete and inaccurate information that is disseminated to regulatory colleagues, development teams, and leadership, resulting in suboptimal decision-making. Through the application of intelligent automation tools, the challenges of manually driven regulatory intelligence generation can be addressed. The process includes intelligent automation of a number of technologies, with each contributing to part of the solution. These technologies include information ingestion from using web crawlers, document review and data extraction using NLP, auto drafting of insights and summaries, and intelligence tools to begin to glean trends to predict future events, as well as inform future regulatory strategies. The benefit of a well-designed regulatory intelligence platform can be significant. Improved decisions on regulatory strategy, insights into evolving regulatory pathways, and market-driven events all may result in improved time to approval across markets. Next slide. So as with everything, this process is not magic. Your organization will not implement wholesale implementation overnight, and you should not expect optimal performance of even the most well thought through IA plans without addressing some core things that are not uncommon. Data quality always seems to be the default nuance, and it's not different here. Processes that consume data and make decisions on it will continue to require access to high quality, reliable information to achieve optimal results. Governance of the IA system will help to ensure trustworthiness in the automation ecosystem by keeping track of the processes as well as the overall bot application and performance. Organizations will also need an operating model that supports the utilization of IA-driven tools. Further, these processes may need to be reimagined to harness the efficiency potential of these tools. Technology solutions and operating models need to be harmonized to ultimately realize the potential from each. As was mentioned earlier, IA models are intended to deliver value when applied and executed at scale. When issues such as ineffective human bot governance, poor exception handling, or incompatibility exist across multiple bot vendors, the expected benefit from IA tools may not be achieved. And lastly, organizational culture plays a big role in the successful implementation and effective utilization of IA tools. The organization must be open to change that results from implementation of IA technologies, which potentially includes significant disruption to current business processes. Next slide. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
We do have a question, Joe, that has come in for you. This is from Vijaya Kumar, and it's with reference to compliance and regulatory requirements. What is the challenge that you foresee in implementing intelligent automation in pharma?
Well, I think the opportunity, right, is to be able to maintain a current understanding of what those regulatory requirements are. The process of utilizing intelligent automation to support the process of gathering, collecting, disseminating that information is an important part of the process. I think that these are things that will have to be developed over time, right? The implementation of these technologies won't happen overnight, as we talked about, for various reasons. But I think the stepwise approach to getting to the point where these tools can be leveraged will certainly benefit the organization, both from, as we talked about, efficiency gains, as well as mitigating compliance risks.
Well, Vijay, I hope that does answer your question. And we also have another one that has, yes, says, thanks, Joe. We also have another one that has come in from Vishal. Should the Center of Excellence for AI-driven intelligent automation be managed differently than the traditional RPA Center of Excellence?
It's a good question. So we talked about, right, the intelligent automation is the convergence of artificial intelligence with RPA as well as intelligent automation process, artificial intelligence processes. Sorry. And so does it need to be different? No, I don't think it needs to be different, right? I think it's the application of technologies and the execution of these solutions that are going to need to be implemented across the business. And so I think it's going to be it's a continuous progression in the capabilities, and so therefore I don't see this as a need to be a separate area of excellence or center of excellence, but I think it could represent ongoing development and progression with those centers that may exist already today.
And I think we have time, just enough time for this one last question that's come in. It's coming from Deborah, and she asks that, can you imagine in the future that IA can support the more automated submission of information to health authorities and the management of queries on the data? Will parallel advancement be needed by HA?
So that's a great question. And as I had alluded to in the beginning, this is something that we are working on within Janssen. And so it's a goal for us to be able to be prepared for when health authorities are ready to accept data-driven submissions or sort of real-time submissions, that we are prepared on our side, both from a technology standpoint as well as an operations standpoint, and sort of the culture of this change, right, being adopted within our organization to be ready to support this. I think that there's a fair amount of work to do on the health authority side to be ready, but I think it's their vision and intent to accomplish this, and so I expect that IA will hopefully be able to be part of the process that helps to drive this data-driven world.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for taking that time out and being here with us today. And
thanks,
yes, and in case anybody does have any questions a little later, if you are around, it'll be wonderful and we can have that answered as well. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session, it dwells on the criticality of various types of correspondences carried out with health authorities, while at the same time It's drawing a linkage with the regulatory intelligence session that was convened by Mr. Vishal yesterday that I hope you had attended. And so it's now my pleasure to welcome back Mohit again to share his thoughts. And maybe by the end of the session, we might have some innovation ideas coming in from each and every one of you in that chat box, which we will also take post Mohit's session. Good evening, Mohit, once again.
Thank you again, Frisha. Okay, I think many of the points that I would like to discuss here have been in some way or other been discussed in our previous sessions. It's just focused on health authority interactions. I would like to draw the attention on those areas. So just in the similar lines, we discussed about regulatory intelligence yesterday. And while many of the evidences that were shared by Vishal were discussed related to information that is collected from health authority, from various journals, news sites, and sponsor many company websites to just gain knowledge on what we would like to do or the sponsors would like to do with their products, take care of certain things during submissions. The session, I'm sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge that the evidences were also available internal in the organization that could be leveraged. And in the session today, I would like to just bring that attention on those intelligence which is available in the organization still takes a longer time to get to. Sometimes we just reinvent the wheel, and we'll speak about some of those situations. Maybe you'll be able to relate to them. And I would really appreciate if you can share your views on this topic. Okay, just moving to the next slide, which is an indication or just setting the context that, okay, we are talking in reference to health authority interactions, correspondences that we make with health authority in reference to submissions, various versions of submissions, which are generally then archived by the sponsor within the organization. And we touched upon a similar topic yesterday was dossier reusability. Some of those versions, some of the content of those versions can be reused. Similar to that, the next one is the queries that we receive from health authority on some of the submissions and how we can leverage again the queries which have been received in past for the same product, maybe in a different region, or for a similar product in the same region. And with in the combination of regulation changes, what kind of answers would now be applicable can be faster derived based on our previous responses. Similar to this is the advisory meetings. A lot of discussions goes on there, inputs collated, the minutes of meetings also shared by the agencies and notes made by within the organization by the attendees. Those contain a value of information. Can we reference them again? And similar to this is warning letters, audit reports, and responses to some of these which are made by various contributors. And this is the whole scheme of correspondence. And there might be many more of similar nature, which we can categorize. And how we can ensure that we can leverage technology to our benefit is what we would like to discuss here. Moving on to the next slide on why there is a need to manage it. Just a few points. I don't think it is anything new for any of the people who are attending this session. It's just reminding ourselves that, okay, we are into a process or I want to not use the word business, but our work is to bring medicines faster to the patients. We want to do it in the most efficient way, ensuring the best quality, not missing any of that. But still, time is of essence. If a health authority has asked a question, the sooner we respond, if we can make that as a practice, as a industry together, the turnaround time of the agency can also be reduced, and the approvals could potentially be received faster. And this information may be lying within the organization. While I do understand in this industry, based on my interactions, I see that there are people who are for a long time in the organization, have a value of information, but still there is a churn like any other industry. And if this information is collected, collated in such a way that we can reference it easier, it will be of benefit. So any ability to search through that historic information quickly, again, enabling through technology. Joe also referred to certain examples in his session on this topic related to health authority responses on various aspects, some things that will overlap here. Moving it to the next point, which is why, sorry, not on the next slide, but the next point on the same slide. Why? Again, as I said, we want to reduce the time to respond. Ability to refer, but also reuse that information to prepare our responses better, would ensure lesser manual errors, increase the quality, and ensure the consistency in responses so that we are not caught in the middle of that catch situation. Okay, you responded one way here, but another way there. Before answering that way, we would have evidences why we are doing so. So these are certain thoughts on why we need to manage these interactions, but then how can we do and what kind of levers could be utilized? Simple and mostly known, just reminding ourselves of that. Moving on to the next slide here is not too many, but we know that data repositories, big data, these are some IT terms you might all have heard about, making it easy and fast to save and access that information. The technology has advanced a lot. The storage has become much cheaper than earlier. And all of this together can help us manage all of this information in a much easier, better way, and enable it to be referenced again faster compared to earlier times. Now, Joe referred to artificial intelligence, automation, enabling many of these. Yes, that is surely a big lever. A lot of advancement done in this area. Yes, there are certain considerations that are also to be kept in mind when we are using AI-based search, but a vast amount of information is available. Can we train these machines to be able to search the right information? I think it is possible, and enabling our searches using AI is going to be of great value. Content reuse, enabling the responses to be potentially built by the machines, using structured content authoring and extracting those information from these earlier responses, submitted dossiers could also be some levers that can be used for the benefit. Moving on to the next is just an example of how this is something that can be collated together. So a variety of information, and this is not limited to the correspondences. It is intelligence which is available within the organization, mostly on the left-hand side, health authority updates being information which can be gathered and collated very easily from outside the organization. Combined with this internal wealth of information can be brought into the repository. Once brought into the repository, it can be then leveraged. I think you need to click once more, Vikram. Yep. So this information brought into the repository can then further be utilized, and with use of machine learning and artificial intelligence, we can reference this information and utilize it for further. So just a slight delay in the animation here. So the first part of bringing the information and then utilizing this information. It's just a quick pictorial representation of bringing various technology levers that we have talked through in this session and previous sessions to our benefit. Moving to the next one as a real-time example, one of which has been also implemented for some sponsors, and it is a constant need that we have seen. The health authority question which has been received, how do we bring it to the common place? How do we organize it? How do we enable that search on that? And then how do we cross-reference it when the next question comes? So the top row represents the first question coming in, maybe in different areas related to specification, stability, or labeling, or any other aspect. And then for the first time, maybe we would have done a lot of manual work in terms of evaluating why did we receive this question, what kind of data needs to be collated to be replied to the agency. Cross-functional meetings would have been organized to brainstorm and answer it. And then after all of that, authoring would have been done and the response sent. Now, at least with the wealth of information that would have already been collated, is it possible for multiple submissions for a product which is going to various regions to reuse some of this and not do this exercise again? So if we have received a similar question from Health Authority 2, which is represented below the mailbox, we would still collate that information and make it part of our repository that we have received the question. But then instead of directly jumping into the evaluation process by calling in too many meetings, we will also first reference the repository, which will give us an opportunity to find a reference of such a response, and then be cross-checked through the meetings and responded to the agency. Now, this can further be extended. It's just a thought or an idea so far, but a concept that is being worked upon is a possibility to build or use natural language generation concepts and build a response, keeping in mind some of the regulatory updates also, and do that. So this is just an example that we wanted to share. So with that, we would like to call upon any questions or any thoughts on this.
Yes, Mohit, we actually do have some questions that have come in. So let me take the first one that we have over here. And this is from Milan Shah, asking that since you are bringing information into a repository, how do you manage the information if it changes at the source?
Okay, a great question and a challenge that surely should be addressable with the technology easily. Any reference of the information that has been brought in can be maintained, and if there is an update, there are two options. We can keep the new information as a separate entity of itself. We could also replace it. I would suggest a second option, which is keeping the history and the new one, and then referencing the information will bring you chronologically the information to the end user. So that will possibly be the easy way out.
We have another question from Anita. If you're able to really understand this one in terms of exactly what she's been pointing to, but she says that is a solution already available for this?
Okay, I think it is. It was referenced in my last slide, in the last slide that we discussed. The the use case that was represented in the last slide is actually a solution which is already available as part of some platforms. We do understand that for collating many of these types of correspondences that we have seen, there are solutions available already, but mostly they were limited to collection. Now with the advancements, the collection can be automated. Also, the search can be made much smarter and easier. So even that has been enabled, and there are more advancements still happening there.
Our next question is from Deborah, and she asked that generally structured content authoritying requires trained users, as the current tools are not particularly user-friendly. So do you see a faster benefit in the use of RPA, NLP, and AI to solve some of the challenges, or will training of the machines for AI also take a long time?
AI over, sorry. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So AI coupled with the machine learning is always a good way, and enabling the machine to bring the output in a smarter way is always a right thing to go. But it also involves training the system in a correct, right way. The combination of all the technologies that you have mentioned, robotics, process automation, natural language processing, and artificial intelligence. Yes, the combination of all of this does bring or solve, bring solutions or solve some of these pain of training the users. We cannot do away with human intervention. There is a lot of cross checks that are surely going to be needed, but yes, use of these technologies can reduce the time significantly to reach to that end state. So I think the answer is already there in your question also, but yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that yes, these things are still evolving, and new things are surely coming in these areas.
We have another one that's coming from David, and he says that, have you made any considerations around predictive health authority interactions?
This is still a topic of discussion. To tell you very frankly, we have not yet done a lot of work in this area, but surely, as I said, technology advancements are happening. One of the things that is important to do such a thing is have a large or vast amount of data, and that will help us to reach this state. We are still maturing in this space. Work is going on. That's how I'd put it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mohit. Our next speaker, Rajneesh Vats, is a domain expert with more than 16 years of experience in global regulatory CMC activities pertaining to small molecules in pre- and post-approval stages of product life cycle. Rajneesh today will be sharing his thoughts on structured content management, and he's going to be elaborating into the industry efforts in this area and their possible realization. Structured content management is one of the most counted upon approach to handle challenges that do arise out of huge data and information that does get generated within various pharmaceutical functions and its dissemination to health authorities. So hopefully we will be tackling that and simplifying that process for each and every one of you. Over to you, Rajneesh. Very good evening.
Well, thank you, Frisha. Indeed, a very good evening to you, and a very good morning, and a very good afternoon to the other folks over here, as appropriate. So, this topic of mine, in fact, we did have some touch upon on this area yesterday in Jeff's and Kathy's presentations as well. So I am trying to kind of complement to that what we had discussed yesterday. And with this, I would like to dwell upon what is there that is actually kind of what has been achieved so far when it comes to structured content and data management, and where should we head to in future so that the best possible uh, realizations of it could be achieved. So the next one, please. Well, with this one, I just wanted to connect the two facets of the regulatory, or I would call it the uh, the pharmaceutical value chain. The two functions. One is research and development, and another one is regulatory affairs. Over the last couple of decades, innovation and drug discovery, these have been augmented significantly with novel therapies and genetic modalities, which have given rise to more advanced biologic processes and manufacturing, as well as chemical and bioanalytical techniques. These, in turn, have contributed to generation of a great deal of information and data, which has kind of led to a data explosion kind of a thing. And this data is sometimes it is lying in a structured form, and most of the times I would say in unstructured forms. This is what has been kind of an output that has been provided to the pharmaceutical value chain by the research and development functions. The another function, as I just mentioned, reg affairs, it has already been, I would say, grappling and dealing with the challenges of knowledge management, say non-harmonized approaches across the countries and across geographies. Uh, there is a huge disconnect that has been seen between what is the industry providing to the reviewers and what are the agency expectations in terms of that, which is kind of leading to discretely longer approval cycles and approval timelines. Again, these are some of the ongoing challenges. On top of it, this substrate from the research and development function, that is this data explosion and the amount of unstructured data so generated, this has continuously added to the woes of regulatory affairs scientists. So to overcome this state of affairs, technology, it is being seen as one of the greatest enablers, wherein usage of digitization, automation, analytics, and artificial intelligence, these could play a bigger role in faster access to easily retrievable, easily reusable, and the most compliant data, which could be ultimately disseminated to the health authorities. Uh, since regulatory affairs functions, they are kind of the interface between the regulatory agencies and the sponsor organizations. So it has become of utmost importance to leverage the technology to the most. The next slide, please. Well, this is a small depiction that portrays how various industries are faring with respect to utilization of technology. Prima facie, if you look at pharmaceutical industry, they might not be there at the global average of the digital quotient, but there are fair reasons behind it. Pharmaceutical industry, unlike these other counterparts, they have a huge involvement of human lives, and it is not possible to digitize everything during the drug development process. This is the reason that these numbers are like that. But this judicious usage of technology and judicious leverage of technology gonna reap the benefits out there and put the pharmaceutical industry in a better shape in the times to come. The next one, please. Well, there has been a significant and perpetual progression that has been seen in pharmaceutical industry with respect to usage of technology. Earlier, for various regulatory submissions, be it the pre-approval submissions, post-approval submissions, or anything that is dealing with the legacy products, these there was a huge amount of data retrievability which was using the manual processes, scrolling through multiple versions of documents, scrolling through multiple versions of or multiple information channels, and the data and documents generated so far. It tend to result in possibility of a lot of errors and a high risk of providing an outdated information to the regulatory agencies. Adoption of structured content and data management approaches has resulted in elimination of these issues quite significantly. With these approaches, the data and knowledge has become more manageable through central repositories and content libraries, which can be digitized and automated to an extent that if there is any change made to a document centrally, it can be easily tracked as well as it can be transcribed to all its trajectories where the document has been submitted or has been used. This way, a great consistency and uniformity is maintained throughout. Uh, alongside, along with this, this approach is completely flexible towards both human and mechanistic interventions, and it can be easily integrated with XML-like technologies, making it quite compatible with both MS Word and the PDF documents, which provides a great opportunity for the regulatory scientists for any structural reusing and structural repurposing of these same data elements that have been used. I got a couple of illustrations depicted in the subsequent slides, wherein these approaches seem to be quite useful. Let us go to the next slide, please. The first of its illustration is from regulatory CMC and how the structured content and data management has been leveraged or could be leveraged in regulatory CMC. If you could see the source data from various cross-functional work streams, it is databased into a central repository or what we call as a content library over here. These this data could be lying at their own functional repositories, and then the approach is that this has to be kind of fed into a central repository, as I just mentioned. These data sets, which are fed into a central repository, are prepared into kind of content blocks, and these are integrated with XML technology. This gives rise to various application programming interfaces, what we call them as APIs, which could further be utilized at an individual level, at a country level, or a team level to create either complete dossier or the partial data sets as and when required and could be submitted to the health authorities. Obviously, when these are created and these are curated, there is an involvement of human intervention involved. But the major chunk could be accomplished by following this approach, and the minimal amount of human intervention is what is envisioned over here. So with this approach, the objective is to kind of create once and publish everywhere, and ultimately reach to the goal of, say, one-touch submissions. Let us go on to the next illustration, which talks about the possible utilization of this approach in labeling management and authoring. Again, for this approach, the basic work is done at the level of what we call as the company core data sheets or CCDS, wherein information or data regarding various sections is fed in the form of content blocks. These blocks can be prepared after assessing how these have to be reused and repurposed, whether those content blocks are to be used at a product level, at a therapeutic area level, at a country or a regional level, and how those are to be disseminated across the users and ultimately to the regulatory agencies. Any change in any of these data blocks can be very easily managed through this approach, and relevant labels or artifacts like pack inserts, the instruction for use documents, the patient guides, the device and software manuals, as in case of medical device industry, those can be prepared very easily and comfortably and disseminated to the health authorities. Let's go to the next one, please. This with this, I intend to kind of harp upon what exactly was kind of the expectation when this journey of structured content and data management was started, uh, say roughly a decade back, where we are and what we have to actually do. So from a content management perspective, I would say we are already there, but the pharmaceutical industry has to travel a lot of distance if it comes to the real realizing the real value of structured content and data management. In earlier approaches of say content management, most of the data used to be handled manually, and we are constantly moving and we are constantly improvising to reach the level of structured content and data management, which is utilizing the technology to its best extent. From simple copying and pasting earlier, we have been able to carve out appropriate data structure and knowledge maps, and with the help of machine learning, are able to quickly put together the artifacts that are compliant and can be submitted to the health authorities. So these are, some of the initiatives that, or this is what has been traversed by the health, I would say, the pharmaceutical industry. There are efforts which are, or there are initiatives which are being taken at the health authority levels as well. There are initiatives like TMAP, the CASA, what we call as the knowledge added assessment and structured application, and a kind of a POC on product quality and CMC stage, wherein utilizing the HL7 FHIR resources are the initiatives that are taken by US FDA, which are helping raising the bar for industry. These are this is what is should be, or I would say, I would rather say that this is what should be the role or the ultimate goal of the pharmaceutical industry, that it has to be our efforts, the industry efforts should get aligned to what these agencies, say US FDA and other agencies, say EMA, in terms of IDMP and SPORE kind of efforts or initiatives that they have come up with. That alignment should happen actually. Though these efforts are quite persistent, yet there is still a gap between what is expected and what is currently being realized. Hence, there is a big need for industry and health authorities to collaborate and align their efforts in such a direction that it should be a win-win for both of them, and the patients can reap in the benefits of these efforts through faster approvals and access to better treatment modalities as quickly as possible. So this is where I intend to end my thoughts, and I'd be happy to take the questions if there are any.
Yes.
Over to you, Freshia.
Yeah, we have a question over here that has come in. What do you think are some of the efforts that are needed to be focused for structured content management approach to be more successful?
Well, I think harmonization is one of the important. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay. I think harmonization is one of the most important efforts that is needed. And harmonization, say, in terms of regulations, harmonization in terms of efforts. So I think one thought that I have in this direction is that, we should, as an industry or in collaboration, obviously, with the health authorities, we should come up with something which is what we call as a global regulatory dictionary, which could contain common terminologies and definitions of regulatory approaches and practices. I think if we have such kind of stuff in place, it would be easier to cut the structured content management approach across countries and across regions. I think there is another thing that is the need of the hour, and what I call it as the inclusivity. We should try to cover as many countries and as many regions within the same umbrella of regulatory requirements. That way, I think there is it is highly imperative that global health authorities, and I think the bigger health authorities, should come to the front and take these initiatives, so that there are, I would say, smaller regulatory agencies or the regulatory agencies which are there in the most of the world countries. They should also be feeling that they are kind of more included into the efforts towards the direction of realization of structured content management approaches.
And so next up, I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Rita Shah, Senior Advisor for Life Sciences, TCS, to share some of her thoughts on how innovation can disrupt labeling operations for the better. Dr. Rita is a life sciences expert with more than 25 years of industry experience in R&D, as well as regulatory information management, strategy, and consulting. A very good evening, Dr. Rita, and over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Freshia, and thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for my bandwidth of this. That's why I'm not getting onto video, so I don't want to disrupt the things. So anyhow, COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how important it is to get drug early into the market as patients are waiting. Getting drug early and sustaining it in the market is dependent on its safety and efficacy profile, which is realized through better outcomes and well-informed patients through effective label management. Typical challenges faced in label management were already covered by Kathleen yesterday, which I may not repeat, but to set a context, I would definitely like to say that we look at it as holistically through the vision of PALM. When we say PALM, can we go to next slide? Okay. So when we say we are not talking about the challenges here, because as I said, Kathleen has already mentioned, but we look at holistically through the vision of PALM as a strong integrated discipline that demands to be connected, intelligent, and automated, already stated by Markman. Where we think collectively that connectivity can be achieved through common data models, knowledge management, content reusability, intelligence through smarter data management, interactive dashboards, and insight-based reports. While automation can be achieved through digital assistants to execute various business processes. Go next. Now here we are talking about some of the pillars that we think can bring transformation in label management by intervention of various digital technologies and novel approaches like NLP, NLG, AI, ML, knowledge graphs. And these are like label intelligence, label automation, label knowledge management, and above all, patient centricity. Next, please. Let's see how label intelligence can bring efficiency and transformation in label processes. So Markman already mentioned about that most of the things that happening like, from capturing the information from unstructured sources to interpret the information and disseminate the information to utilization and initiate the action or trigger the action, and thus realize the value of the insight is very critical. And we see that digital utilities can help in enabling those things. For example, if we look into the getting the regulatory intelligence from label perspective, through regulatory compliance perspective, and through labeling competitor intelligence perspective. So that we can sense the insight for better positioning of the product label, and the risk planning and decision making can be made. So this can be done by keeping updated with the regulatory updates, for example, the safety changes, black box warning, and so on and so forth, content and format changes. This can also be looked into finding the warnings and issues that are being issued to various companies on similar kind of products, health authorities' concerns around the product labels, and also it can be helpful in realizing the competitive intelligence, like comparing the product labels and do benchmarking assessments to improve. So the insight, once it's generated, it needs to be embedded into the business processes for faster compliant execution and getting into a loop of continuous improvement through human intervention. So it can also help us in finding out that what are the safety changes, whether the decision making of that safety changes, what impact it will have, and whether it needs to be updated the checklist or SOP. So the intelligence can be derived in that way also to help to enable the transformation of the labeling processes. Next slide, please. While we are talking about the intelligence here, I'm also talking about how the intelligent mechanisms through artificial intelligence can be used to manage consistent content creation and improve compliance. Our internal assessment shows more than 50% of changes are happening in SMP C section 4.8, which impacts 4.8, 4.4, 4.2. These are some of the sections that we realize having more often frequent changes happening, and which is impacting the PIL and other local documents, which are child documents of that. So we see that the downstream documents get affected. So can we use AI to sense that change in data? Can we do auto change? Can we change the and change the data and create the version history? Can we enhance the content, contextualize the content, and propagate and loop it into the curation cycle for the improvement? So those are the things that we see that artificial intelligence can be helpful in enabling those tasks, those activities that can enable consistent content creation. Next slide, please. So as we look here from the automation perspective, this is what we see that when we talk about integrated labeling processes, we think that through value stream mapping, when we see that there's a many opportunities for optimization of these labeling processes, and a reduction of manual and redundant tasks can be eliminated, and then we can also leverage RPA, BPM like technologies to potentially improve the efficiency of processes like label change management, or identifying the terminologies which can be medical terminologies, and curating that and checking the QC of labels. So those are the kind of way how we see the whole end-to-end process can get truncated and eliminate and reducing the cycle time to bring efficiency in the labeling processes. Next, please. So this is one of the example in automation where we are talking about how automated QC check of artwork can be done. But we have done a small POC around that and tried to see, how the fonts and colors and location of the actual content can be placed with reference to when it is checked with the reference label. As Kathleen also was mentioning yesterday, that they are also, looking for the technology where image analytics can be used to identify the artwork and other color intensity. So that is the work that we are also proceeding around this. Next. So inconsistent labels and lack of control of content across label is a challenge for pharmas, and we understand that, and we try to leverage digital technologies and novel approaches like knowledge graph and with fusion fused with the digital assistants and so on, and bring two concepts to drive faster compliant label generation. Concept one is label reference data domain model knowledge, which leverages standards like IDMPN and data entity relationships. Second is the information product type concept, which defines the various label types and their sections, segments, components. Now we have two things, reference domain and one reference data domain and another is the information product type concept. So when now both the linked labeling data and content structure, with the help of linked label data and labeling content structure, digital assistants can leverage learned authoring styles and accelerate the content creation. So we also look into this and try to see that how we can create the content components or content chunks that can be assembled into the documents and get into the curation cycle for the improvement, and hence enabling the faster label generation. So there will be definitely local requirements around the label which needs to be incorporated in, which can be additionally added through the rule engines and so on. This common reference data model, what we are showing here as a knowledge graph of labeling, this common reference data model based on knowledge graph will be shared among different label documents like CCDS, SMPC, PIL and other local labels. So hence the data, underlying data, if it gets changed, so it will autonomously get updated wherever it will have impact on those documents or those label contents. So that hence preserving the integrity and consistency through digital connectivity. So this is also the answer to Milin's question, what he was asking about how we can maintain the change of the data in structured content. So the knowledge graph is one of the way where we can maintain that connectivity, digital connectivity, to ensure that the integrity is preserved and the continuous updation of the data is happening consistently. Next slide, please. Well, we see that today times with COVID-19 also, we see that the patient demands are increasing and they want the information in real, fast information, which is readily updated and coming from authorized sources. So how they can leverage the code or sensors or the RFID to get it directly from the authorized sources, and as per the appropriateness they need that information, how easily and readily they can get it. Then with COVID-19, we also see that the demand of the multimedia files by patients is getting more and more, because they want to know what is the procedure, they want to know where, what are the side effects or rashes. So they want to know, they want to access different files, maybe the videos, pictures, images. So the demands are increasing, the scalability of the labels is also increasing. So how we can ensure that architecture like cloud-based and architecture is there to meet those needs, increasing needs, and e-labels kind of things are available for patients for better patient centricity and better outcomes. Next slide, please. Well, coming back to my first point, that what is our vision of PALM4? We align with our thoughts, and we are aligned with our thoughts, and we keep on working around this through our vision and through our thoughts. And we think that the new age technologies and the fusion of new age technologies need to be embraced to bring the transformation in the labeling processes. That is the way to go. That's my here is what I will end with my presentation. Any questions?
Yes, I'm just waiting to see if we do have any questions that do come in. We do have one. We have this from Venkatesh Rao saying that at TCS, are we already working on knowledge graphs in any of the domains?
Yeah, to answer your question, yes, we under data sciences initiatives at TCS, we are doing multiple projects under knowledge graph theme and running various use cases from research and clinical area. Also, we have recently piloted art of possible technology using these knowledge graph and fusion technologies in AI-based authoring. And also we are developing some reference data models in CMC, taking care of the CM stability report and the labeling area also from the CCDS SMP-CPL area.
We have our next question that has come in from Mr. Singh, and he says that with automation, how do you see management of local label changes?
Yeah, so local label changes will also be managed through the knowledge graphs at the locally, and once they can be, since they are digitally connected, we will have a knowledge graph showing that this. There will be a digital connectivity between the central and the local, so that whenever the local data is ready, it gets pushed into the main label.
All right, I hope that you have got your answer over there. And our next question is from Sarath Mundra, and he says that, are there any label digitization efforts that are ongoing already? And also, is the PAL, the PAL is focused mainly on artworks, operations?
We are currently doing we are currently in a very nascent stage. We are looking for some digital technologies which can improve the operational efficiency, but to answer your question, we are at a nascent stage right now.
All right. Well, I think that's about enough time also that we have. Thank you so much for coming and, of course, joining us. You have big thanks from everyone for answering their questions as well. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that does bring us close to that end, but I have to tell you that please do not log off, because we have a small special moment that we would like to do with everybody that is already logged in over here. And of course, if you were here yesterday, then you would remember that we also have that moment where we have Dr. Hilda coming and summarizing our event and sharing our next steps. So a very good evening, ma'am.
Thank you, Freesia. And once more, I must say, I'm extremely pleased also with the speaker panel of this second day session. They're very compelling insight. And also thank you once more, Freesia, for your excellent hosting also for this second day. Now, let me summarize some of the topics discussed today. So we started our session with Chris Lee from Organon, a Merck company. And Chris' insights in how technology can drive innovation regulatory affairs. His journey also of continuously pushing towards innovation, how to build up also the framework within the organization, and how making also a nice mix of low-hanging fruits, but also keeping in mind the long-term goals was extremely interesting. And we also appreciated very much that Chris gave us a glimpse of how he's setting up his strategic operations department within Organon. Next, we had Joseph Markman from Janssen. Now, Joe introduced us in the intelligent automation concept, the convergence of automation and artificial intelligence. And Joe described also in detail the potential of intelligence automation to enable digital transformation and how it impacts regulatory operations like health authority query management, intelligence content creation, automated label management, and health authority communications. And Joe also ended his session with highlighting what are really critical success factors to take into account. As third speaker, we had on the agenda Mohit Gupta from TCS. And as you all know, Mohit is heading up the TCS ADD regulatory platform and the core driver after these cross-pharma regulatory meetings. Now, Mohit, in his session, he went in very detail in the various type of communications with health authorities, which can be queries and responses, meeting minutes, warning letters, audit reports, submissions, you name it. And he went in detail in how technology and regulatory intelligence can help managing these various type of communications. And this session was also building further on the regulatory intelligence session of Vishal yesterday, and where he went more in detail in some real-life use cases of how technology can increase efficiency and quality, and most important, also reduce the health authority timelines. As fourth speaker, also very interesting, we had Ranish Vats from TCS, and who embedded us in how to enable structured content management, especially what has already been realized in this domain, but where also the industry is heading towards. And like Ranish, for example, mentioned, managing the data clutter is some of the most relevant information or most exciting items and challenges that are currently faced in the regulatory domain, because data is coming from different angles, like he mentioned, the structured, the non-structured, a huge tsunami of data, how to manage it. And he also linked his session very closely to Jeff Kinzer's session of yesterday, but again, he dived in more detail in both regulatory CMC activities and then also specifically the label activities. And as last speaker, we just heard Dr. Rita Shaw from TCS, and who showed us various digital interventions and practical use cases in innovations in different domains, like, for example, the label intelligence, but also label automations like in content creation or picking up inconsistencies in the artwork or label knowledge management. Rita also showed us how digital labels can have a significant impact on patient centricity, which is a topic which is honestly very close to my heart, because I still remember when I hosted in my earlier role the first cross-pharma meeting of Transcelerate e-label, as well as also the various engagements that I had with health authorities like BfArM and so on digital label. So very close to my heart, that patient centricity and digital labels. And Rita also ended her session then with giving TCS vision on the need for a unification model, or what we call within TCS the pollen vision, the packaging, artwork and label management vision, where we bring much more connected, intelligent, automated and on cloud system, all make them much more connected to enable harmonization. So that is in a nutshell the very interesting session of today, and a big thank you to all the speakers for their very engaging and inspiring talk, and we hope that these presentations can help also address the audience with any regulatory challenges that they might have within their organization. Now, in case of any questions, or also like you mentioned, Fresia, advices or innovation ideas, feel free to reach out to any of the speakers or to the organizing committee, Mohit, Vishal and myself, because we would be very happy to answer any questions that they might have and to help you deploy the next generation of regulatory activities enabled by technology within your company. So with that, I hand over to the closing notes for that Fresia will take.
Thank you. Thank you, Hidde. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if, like we mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions that you would like to ask, if I could request first all our speakers to put their cameras on so that we can also let everyone over here know that you are still here as part of the conversation. And if you all have any questions for any of our speakers, they would be more than happy to address those for you as well. And along with that, if we still do have on our call right now, if we do have Mr. Vikram Karakoti, if we have Carolyn and Dr. Shirish as well, it would be wonderful if you all could also put your cameras on. And if there are any questions, any feedback, any suggestion from any of you, we would definitely love to hear from each and every one of you over here. Well, you can see we have the team coming on over here and putting their cameras to say a big hello. And I'm just going to give it like maybe another 5 seconds more just to see that if we have any other questions coming in. Otherwise, we have a request for each and every one of you. If you could all put your cameras on, all our participants, it would be wonderful to take one big picture with everybody just to see how all of us have spent the last 2 days together, sharing ideas, a big amalgamation of thoughts that has been taking place. Thank you all. I can see a lot of our cameras coming on as well. Don't be shy, folks. Don't be shy. If you can put those cameras on, it will make a wonderful moment and a great memory for all of us to keep as well over here. It would be good to see your faces. And I can see that we've got a lot of our participants putting their cameras on. I'm egging you on a little bit, I know, over here, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm sure that it will make a wonderful photograph for us to have as well. We can do better than this, folks. We have more participants than we have cameras on right now, but don't be shy, like I have been saying. Okay, and I have my camera crew as well that will be taking that one big group photograph of everyone. Smile, everyone. It's wonderful to see all your faces over here together. We truly hope that you have enjoyed all your sessions. And of course, we truly hope to see you again next year as well. But before we do close, if I could request Carolyn to also come onto the screens and giving a closing note as well.
Yes, I'm on the screen. Hope you all can see me. This has been a fabulous session. I don't want to repeat everything that's been said because I think there's been some great summaries, and thank you, Hilda. So I just want to extend my appreciation to all the participants and all the speakers. This really has been a fabulous day. Thank you so much.
All right. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for being a part of our Virtual Cross Pharma event. We hope that you have had a wonderful, wonderful session and a great day that you have spent right over here with us. In fact, I might say a good 2 days that you have spent with all of us. Wishing you all a very happy, a very healthy, and a very safe 2021. My name is Freesia. Thank you all for joining in, and good night.